Raindrops danced on the roof and windows of the house, making a rhythmic melody like an orchestra of percussion instruments. The loud rumblings of thunder echoed through the night, reminiscent of cymbals. Tip, tap, boom. I was already half asleep in our bed when she spoke softly to me. It was little more than a whisper, barely louder than the rain outside the window. I barely paid attention to her words as I peacefully drifted into a pleasant slumber. But a few seconds after the words left her mouth and hung in the air, I finally heard her. It almost made me wake up. "What did you just say, Claire?" In the darkness, I heard her take a deep breath and sigh sadly. Her hand slowly reached beside her and turned the switch on the bedside lamp, flooding our bedroom with light. Then she rolled over and lay on her back. Her eyes stared up at the ceiling above us, avoiding mine completely. "I'm unhappy, Frank," she repeated quietly, as if regretting having to say it. Unhappy. That caught my attention. That word, spoken in a soft, reluctant tone, is always part of a deeper message. It is never just a word spoken alone. It is like a scout, scouting an area for vulnerability to attack. Soon he is joined by an army ready to ravage the land. "Are you unhappy? What does that mean?" I rolled over to face her, to get a proper look at my wife. I saw unshed tears glistening in her eyes. She didn't turn to me. Her gaze was fixed on the ceiling above her head. "I'm not happy. With us. You. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me," is a famous aphorism uttered by children. Most of us have used it at some point in our childhood when another child tried to torture us in a war of words. The truth is that this phrase is used as a balm to cover up the pain that words actually cause us. It makes us feel as if the words never touched us. But if words didn't touch us, we would never feel the need to say them. The words Claire just said to me touched me, like a sharp blade touching tender skin. Tears streamed down her eyes and ran down her cheeks. She still didn't look at me, but I stared at her intently. The face that I had thought was so beautiful for the past 11 years was filled with such excruciating pain at this moment. I would have felt the need to comfort her if the pain in my heart didn't overshadow everything she was feeling at this moment. "Are you unhappily married to me? Is that what you mean?" She didn't answer me. She only snorted. But her silence and the fact that she didn't recant spoke volumes. I don't think there's any way to accurately describe the torrent of agony that consumes you when the person you thought you'd grow old with tells you she's not happy to be with you. "Why aren't you happy?" I asked, trying to remain calm. But the cracks in my voice gave it away. Truth be told, I was on the verge of breaking down at any moment. Tears continued to stream down her face and landed on the pillow. She was still staring at the ceiling and avoiding my gaze. "I don't know, Frank, I just am." "You don't know why you're unhappy. That sounds like Claire's delusions." I spat at her. I started to let the pain give way to anger, which was much easier to control, and redirect it. I saw her flinch at my words, tears flowing, but she didn't say anything else. "So what does that mean? You want to walk away from me? Abandon us? Huh? Is that what you're trying to tell me?" Silence. I expected she was about to explode and start categorically denying that she wanted to leave me. Claim that she still loved me, but she just needed to work some things out. But she didn't. She let the silence answer for itself. I don't know if words could have hurt as much as her silence. It was as if she had nothing else to say. I answered the wound in my heart with venom and rage. I pulled the blanket off me and jumped out of bed like it was on fire. Claire finally turned her head and looked at me. "Frank, please try to understand." "Understand what, Claire? That my wife doesn't love me anymore and wants to leave me? I think I understand perfectly well." "I never said I didn't love you, Frank. I just said I was unhappy." I knew right away that she was backing off. I wasn't going to let her off the hook. "So you want to stay after me?" She hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. However, the only right words were the ones that said she wanted to stay married to me. She didn't need to look for those exact words. Any answer other than immediate was the wrong answer. "I don't know what I want." It was all she could come up with. We just stared at each other. The only thing between us were thousands of unspoken words. Memories of our lives, our children, our love seemed to vanish into thin air as the new reality hit us. At least it seemed that way to me. It seemed that for her, this reality already existed, and had for some time. Yes, you want to. You want a divorce, I said after a moment's silence. The words stuck in my throat as if they didn't want to be spoken. She didn't answer me, but she didn't need to. She seemed to say so much and so little. I even laughed a little, thinking that this was the most efficient use of words I'd ever seen. Efficiency is getting the most out of what you can do with as few resources as possible. Hey, I'm an engineer. For the last 13 years, although many people claim I've been one since birth, solving problems and making things work is in my blood. Even in times like now, I can find connections related to making something or making things work better. My laughter confused her a bit. She carefully got out of bed and slowly walked over to my seat. Honey, she began, reaching out her arms to me in an attempt to comfort me. But it was more like she was trying to soothe me, to soften the blow of her crushing revelation, as if what she would say or do would make everything better. I backed away from her. I wasn't in the mood to ease her guilt. Don't call me that. You can't call me sweetheart after you said you wanted to leave me, Claire. She swallowed and pulled her hands away, avoiding my gaze again. I didn't say that. I'm just trying to explain to Frank. Do you or do you not want to be married to me? It doesn't need an explanation. It's a yes or no question, so answer it. In one word, yes or no. Frank, just let me… Yes or no? I interrupted her. In my opinion, any explanation she might give should only follow after she gave that answer. But she didn't answer. She sat looking at me with tears in her eyes. That tells me everything I need to know. You don't need to say. The fact that you don't say yes can only mean no. Tell me I'm wrong. Silence again. You know what? I'm tired. I worked 11 hours today without a lunch break. I don't need an explanation as to why you suddenly want to leave me, why you're so unhappy. I need to sleep. So I'm going to the couch in my office to get some rest. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Her face suddenly changed. From a sullen woman, she turned into an enraged banshee. She had found the voice she had sorely lacked a few minutes ago. Screw you, Frank, she exploded. Her reaction was so startling that I was caught off guard. She looked me in the eye with an expression of determination and frustration. I know you spent 11 hours at work today. Do you want to know what you did tonight when you got home? More work. You shut yourself in your office like you do every night. And now you can't even have a conversation with me about why I'm unhappy? You say you want to leave me. What else is there to talk about? That's not what I said. You didn't deny it, Claire. You needn't distract me from the conversation. Tell me what you want. You want to know what I want? I'll tell you. I want to feel loved. I want a man who wants me around, who wants to be around me. I want to feel sexy with a man who thinks I'm sexy. That's what I want. And I don't make you feel that way? Is that what you're saying? She fell silent again. I wasn't going to let her go that easily anymore. Damn it, Claire. Answer me. Something suddenly hit me. I don't know where it came from, but there it was. Some kind of revelation. A moment when everything became clear to me. She didn't say she needed me to make her feel the way she wanted to feel. She said she wanted a man who would make her feel that way. Does someone else make you feel that way? I gasped. Her face slowly lowered until she just burst into tears. Then she covered her face with her hands. Yes, she said quietly between sobs. Her voice no longer had the anger and venom that had been there a moment ago. Now there was only sadness in it. My world had stopped. Everything in me stopped living. I didn't react to it. I couldn't. I just sat there and watched her cry. Who? I asked finally. There was no answer. Only more crying. Who? I shouted, shaking her slightly. She hiccuped in surprise, then wiped her tears away. Doug, she said quietly. It's Doug. Doug? My former best friend. How corny is that? Is it possible to describe in words what you're feeling in that moment? There are no adjectives that can accurately explain it. No one can come up with poetic metaphors that can accurately paint the depths of despair you plunge into when you learn that your wife and best friend have betrayed you. Both have chosen someone else over you. Even worse, they chose each other. This intensifies the betrayal tenfold. The pain that results from that betrayal is also magnified. Pain. That is the only word that fits. No other word can fit. Not even synonyms can compare to what this knowledge does to you. I wanted to answer, but I couldn't. There was so much to say, but it all meant nothing. My mind was spinning with questions, accusations, threats, simple words like cheating bitch and bitch. But nothing was coming out. I did the only thing I could do. I left. I just hopped out of the room and left her there, heading down the stairs to my makeshift sleeping quarters in the study that was next to the living room. I closed the door, slamming it shut behind me. For a moment, I felt the safety of solitude. But that feeling of safety was deceptive, because I wasn't actually alone. Pain accompanied me. Yeah, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs and realized it was Claire following me. I quickly got up and closed the door to my office. I couldn't talk to her. I didn't trust myself. I had never hit her, but tonight threatened to break that record. That lock protected us both from me. The doorknob rattled as she tried to open the door. When she failed, she knocked insistently, shouting my name. I continued to ignore her, still not trusting myself. The pain was speaking to me, ordering me to do horrible things to her. She was painting horrible pictures in my head. She finally gave up after 10 minutes with a sigh and went back upstairs. I finally got some peace and quiet and tried to make the most of it by getting the sleep I so desperately needed. Unfortunately, getting some much-needed rest was easier said than done. The couch was quite comfortable and not at all familiar. I had fallen asleep on it many times when I had a problem to solve, and I didn't want to disturb Claire's sleep. Right now, the problem was that my mind couldn't settle down. I was tormented by the thought of my wife falling out of love with me and falling in love with Doug. The realization that she didn't want to live with me was repeated over and over again. When did this happen? And worse, how could I have missed these signs? My mind was reminiscing, replaying and replaying the relationship I had with my wife. I tried to find the moment when the love began to fade, the moment things started to change. There had to be something. Looking through our years together, I couldn't find anything. Nothing grand enough to explain how we'd lost our way. It was the same as it had always been. I wondered, when had Doug had time to get involved in this story? I had known Doug for almost 13 years. He was my friend before I met and married Claire. We used to work at the same company. In fact, we both started working there together. There are sociable people who are popular wherever they go. They can make friends at any time. I'm not like that. I don't have many friends. In fact, for me to even call someone a friend is a leap. Doug was my friend. Claire was my wife, who was also my friend. Emphasis on was. It's not that I was socially inept. It's just that I don't often meet people with whom I have that kind of connection. I have coworkers at work that I like. For example, my assistant Sarah is someone who has helped me a lot in my life. I admire her and find her to be a pleasure to be around. But even with all that, I wouldn't consider her a friend. Growing up, I was an only child. I learned to do without the daily interaction with other people. That independence has carried over into adulthood. But having no friends doesn't mean a person doesn't want to have any. As I mentioned, Doug and I once worked side by side. We worked together for several years until I was promoted and became his boss. There was no jealousy or anything, at least as far as I could tell. We still socialized occasionally when we could. Unfortunately, my promotion turned into a drastic reduction in my free time. Our friendship continued to exist, but it definitely suffered. I didn't realize until tonight how badly it had been damaged. The tension became even worse when he was offered a job at another company. It was due to a promotion, so it wasn't a question of whether or not he would take it. I was happy for him, but I was sad to see him go. And one thing about Doug was that he wasn't like me when it came to engineering. He was smart as hell, but he wasn't as dedicated to his work as I was. He enjoyed making good money, as I did, but he didn't find the joy in construction that I did. To him, it was just a job. He could do it and go home. When he left the lab and went home, he didn't even like to talk about work. I was the complete opposite. I loved building things. Things that were already built, I loved to take apart to make them better. Even when I was with my wife and kids at family gatherings or restaurants, I would take the time to sketch little improvised schematics on napkins and other items. Doug and I were interns when we started out. I was accepted into a one-year internship that only had 12 spots available. When the internship ended, there were 2 spots available. May the best man or woman win. Doug took an immediate liking to me, and I don't like a lot of people. I felt a kinship with him. During the internship, we helped each other. We each weeded out the competition until the last 2 were left. I'd like to say we did it ethically, but I'd be lying. When you're competing for a job that starts at $80K a year, the good guys do finish last. And don't let Disney tell you otherwise. There was one intern who was a threat to us. His name was Donald. There were 3 of us left. Since there were only 2 openings, we knew there was a chance one of us would fail. Donald was smarter than both of us, and we needed him to go. He had a propulsion project that would probably knock one of us out of the race. So we stole it. One night we got him drunk under the pretense of friendship, stole his designs, emailed them to Doug, and defaced his laptop to make sure he didn't save them anywhere else. Then, we took all the CDs and thumb drives in his room, hoping we had at least some backups. The plan was to make sure he couldn't wow anyone with his design. Then, when we were sure he was safe, Doug would email him the schematics. It worked. Without his designs, he had no chance of success. Better yet, he created a scandal and disqualified himself. He attacked us in front of everyone, while Doug and I played innocent victims. After Donald was gone, there was no question about who got the 2 jobs. I met Claire after I finished my internship and had been officially employed with the company for a year. Doug and I had been friends for 2 years. I won't talk about how we met, nor will I talk ad nauseum about our courtship. It seems unimportant now. We met, she seemed beautiful, I asked her out, and a year later we were married. We've been married for the last 10 years. We even have 2 girls. Stacy, 8 years old, and Kelly, 5 years old. Doug has been in my house more than his own. I wouldn't say he was a permanent tenant, but if I woke up in the morning and saw him rummaging through my refrigerator, I'd just ask if he'd made coffee. The thoughts of Doug coming to my house were adding up. He started coming less and less often. I can't tell you exactly at what point things started to slow down. At that point, I didn't even think about it enough to pay attention. If I had to estimate, I'd say it started a little over 6 months ago. He started showing up at my house less often. He didn't act differently with me, he just stopped coming over so unexpectedly. Is that related? The clock above my desk was ticking down the seconds. Seconds turned into minutes, which turned into hours. Time seemed to have no meaning, to be endless, but it flew by in the blink of an eye. Before I knew it, the sunlight was trying to shine through the curtains. I literally hadn't slept a wink all night. I groaned, contemplating whether I should get up to go to the bathroom. I finally decided that if I didn't go now, the choice might not be in my hands. Eventually, I gave up and sprinted to the bathroom. Finished, I went back to my office and thought about calling in sick. I was in no mood to work today. I had just managed to get under the covers when I heard the alarm clock going off upstairs. It would have woken me up and let me know it was time to start the workday if I had been sleeping soundly in the warmth of my own bed, next to my wife. I heard the alarm clock suddenly go silent, letting me know that Claire had turned it off. I lay there, not knowing what was going to happen next. Then I heard a rustle upstairs, followed by her footsteps on each step as she descended them. A few seconds later, there was a knock on the door. "Frank, are you awake?" I decided to ignore her. Immature, I know, but I wanted her to leave. So I pretended to be asleep, tucking my face into my pillow. I heard the door creak open and listened as she walked into my office. I mentally kicked myself for leaving it unlocked when I came back from the bathroom. "Frank, I know you're awake. I've been lying next to you for 10 years. I know what you look like when you sleep." "What do you want, Claire?" I asked, the pillow covering my mouth a little. I didn't even turn to face her. "Just checking on you. I was worried about you." I snorted. She was worried about me. After she ripped my heart out of my chest, she was worried about me. "I'm fine. Go away." I didn't hear footsteps moving away, which meant the bitch was still standing there. Half of me wanted to find something heavy to launch at her. The other half wanted to just ignore her. Frank, we need to talk about this. I think things went downhill last night. I finally sat up and turned to her. She looked like she had no more luck catching that elusive creature called a dream than I had. I was strangely comforted by this. What on earth happened, Claire? You cheated on me with my best friend and now you want to leave me. That's the whole point, isn't it? Frank, do you want to be married to me, Claire? Huh? She began to fidget nervously. It's not that simple, Frank. Forgive me. But there was no way in the world I could have found a simpler question. It didn't even require an explanation. All it required was a yes or no answer. What the hell's so hard about it, Claire? Either you want to be Mrs. Underwood or you don't. How much easier could it be? If you'll just let me explain. Kelly and Stacy's footsteps were heard on the stairs, and the conversation broke off. We greeted our girls and began the morning ritual of getting them ready for a new day. We didn't talk about the freaking huge elephant in the room anymore, at least not with words. We looked at each other over our daughters' heads, trying to catch each other's train of thought. But soon the responsibilities of the day put this conversation on hold, and we began preparing to conquer the world. As if on autopilot, our family showered, dressed, and went about their business. I decided to go to work. I didn't want to be alone with Claire when the girls left for school. Not right now. This conversation could wait. As I drove to work, a whirlwind of questions swirled in my head. Add to that the lack of sleep I was suffering from, I could tell that today was getting ready to be a shitty day. However, as soon as I pulled into the parking lot outside my work, all other business stopped. Claire stepped back into the background. I felt nothing from lack of sleep. Suddenly, my mind exploded with formulas about our current engine problems. My company was on the verge of creating a new type of engine. It was to have significantly more performance than its predecessors. Power output would increase dramatically, but fuel efficiency would also improve. Our company could make a lot of money on this project. The only problem was that we were on the verge of perfection, but not close enough to it. The engine ended up failing every test. I mentally wrote down all the calibrations that needed to be done. Thomas, my intern, met me at the door with a fresh cup of coffee, like he did every morning, expecting him to kiss my ass and show me why he's smarter than the other interns. I like Thomas because he reminds me of myself when I was an intern. Mr. Underwood, I'm glad you're here. I have some thoughts on why the engine is failing. I tried to call you last night, but your wife said you couldn't be disturbed. I left her a message for you, but you never answered. Did you get it? Yeah, no. The last thing I wanted to think about right now was Claire. I needed to focus. Even the mention of her name was causing ripples in my pond. Never mind, Thomas. I'm already here. What's the matter? Well, I was trying to explain to your wife. Stop throwing rocks in my pond, Thomas. That the new engine keeps failing because there are things we haven't accounted for. We keep trying to compensate, but nothing works. The power increase works for a while, but it keeps failing because we can't provide enough cooling. I think we need to think less about increasing power and more about finding another way to cool it. He held his head up proudly, as if he'd just solved our mystery. Damn interns. I had to fight the urge to laugh at him. He was smart. Hell, he was practically a genius. But we were all like that. Top of the class, 4.0 GPA, blah, blah, blah. That pretty much describes everyone here. You couldn't get in the door unless you had that at the very least. He couldn't come up with anything we hadn't already thought of. Still, you have to keep the interns motivated. We were squeezing the shit out of them for next to nothing, so you have to give them a cookie every now and then. Good work, Thomas. We'll study that theory. We're already studying it. Have been for weeks now, but it's not worth busting his head over. Thomas smiled broadly again, practically panting, sticking out his tongue and wagging his tail. He was enjoying his doggy treat. I almost patted him on the head. Here's the new projected performance for today's tests. He handed me a paper with the latest data. The numbers looked impressive. Of course, they always look impressive on paper. All right, Thomas. Tell the others I'll be down in the lab in a second. He started to run down the hallway, but then stopped and turned around. Boss, is everything okay at home? Mrs. Underwood looked a little... Everything's fine. I cut him off abruptly. He looked at me with concern, but there was no room for discussion on my face. Releasing the last stone from his hands, he silently agreed that any mention of his wife was forbidden. He nodded his head and headed for the lab. I stopped by the assistant's office to see if I had any appointments scheduled. Sarah briefed me on what I had to do. It was all part of a standard day, except for the meeting with the heads. That's what we called the big shots, the ones who made all the decisions in the company. The department heads needed constant reaffirmation of their importance to the company. So we gave them that opportunity by providing periodic progress reports on our projects. I always dreaded these meetings. Each one was an interrogation by upper management, asking stupid questions they didn't want answered. All they wanted to hear was that everything was perfect. If there was no progress, they wanted to know why. But I couldn't tell them why without starting to explain the problems we were trying to overcome. That explanation was technical, full of pithy words they didn't care about. The only words they knew were words like rate of return and lower bound. Every time we had to embark on a new product development, this was the dance we did. We all knew it. We all hated it. After getting my day scheduled, I thanked Sarah. She looked at me worriedly for a moment. "Mr. Underwood, are you okay?" Damn it. How I wished everyone would stop asking me that. "I'm fine, Sarah. Just going through some things at home. I'll be fine." "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked, looking genuinely concerned. I didn't want to be a fool, especially in front of her, but I totally didn't want to talk about it. "No," I said simply. It came out harsh, but it clearly conveyed my thought. She understood my tone, nodded her head briefly, and left it at that. I went on about my business. I had a meeting with the chapters, which went about as well as I expected. After that, I went back to the lab for the rest of the day. And I mean that literally. It was already dark outside when I finally entered the code to unlock the machine and pressed the start button. I barely heard the engine roar to life. It purred softly as the car beeped, letting me know that I should fasten my seatbelt. That's what an engine should sound like. Or not sound. I know a manly man will tell you that loud, powerful, muscular engines are the way to go. Massive machines that bark and growl when stopped at red lights, making all less powerful cars cringe at their monstrous presence. One press of the gas pedal results in a squeal as the car hurtles forward, roaring loudly and leaving behind smoke and burnt rubber. But that's not the point for me. I like luxury engines. Strong, quiet ones. The kind that can hit 100 miles an hour in seconds without a whisper. Cars like that don't need to make their presence known to the world. They just turn up, shiny and sleek. Women get wet just sitting on the passenger side as the padded seats massage their buttocks. Muscular cars will get a guy's attention. Luxury cars will get a woman's attention. Have you ever seen an Aston Martin or Tesla commercial? Chances are you haven't. You don't need to know the price or its specifications. And if you do, you've come to the wrong place. Just being able to sit in a car elevates your status. A man's car is an extension of himself. Masculine cars are all about show. To show the world how masculine you are. Luxury cars are about wealth. A man can buy a Mustang or a Challenger and park it right outside his apartment. People who buy new BMWs, Porsches, etc., park them in their driveway, most often right next to their spouse's luxury car. Here's the deal. I know I'm speaking superficially, but you have to understand. When I was a kid, I had no money. My dad was a mechanic. My mom worked at Walmart. By conventional standards, we weren't poor. But the high school I attended was in a wealthy neighborhood. These kids weren't rich in private schools, but most of them had at least one parent with a name accompanied by a brief description of their education. Doctor, lawyer, PE, etc. Yeah, these children had material things that they took for granted. Their closet consisted of expensive clothes sewn by gay men, whose names were spoken with reverence. Most of them were given cars for their 16th birthdays. I'm not talking about beaters. I'm talking about cars that grown men with full-time jobs will probably never own. Any problem they encountered was solved with a phone call to mom and dad. It wasn't like that for me. My clothes were ordinary. My first car was a Neon, and I worked at Best Buy for it. So while I wasn't poor, compared to him I might as well have been on welfare. My salvation was that I was smarter than 95% of the students in the school. The other 5% were paid to be there. I studied hard. I never got less than a B, and even then in PE. I gave my best because I swore I would have the life I was denied. My children would be the ones to be envied. My children. Just thinking about them made me remember what was waiting for me at home. My family. My wife. My unhappy wife. I drove home in a heavy silence. No longer able to hide behind work, I was forced to revisit yesterday's conversation. I can't describe how I felt thinking about it. Last night I was filled with anger and resentment. Now a part of me was numb. I felt a little disconnected. I had spent the entire day at work avoiding it. Now I couldn't do it anymore. The silence as I drove home made me wonder about it. Everything seemed somehow abstruse. I was dreading the upcoming confrontation, but at the same time I needed it to happen. I didn't know what to expect when I walked through my front door. Would my wife already be packed and ready to leave with her new lover? Would she be waiting with the divorce papers? Or would she just pretend nothing had happened? When I finally walked through the front door of my house, everything was kind of anticlimactic. The girls were eating cookies in the living room. Stacy was doing homework and Kelly was coloring a coloring book. My wife was sitting on the couch at her laptop. Across from them, our 65-inch TV was idly showing an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. "Hi, Daddy," said Stacy, briefly looking up from her homework. Kelly continued to color intently, as if she were solving a complicated calculus problem. Claire looked up from her laptop with a look of trepidation. She seemed to be trying to gauge my mood. "Hey, sweetie, how was work?" she asked, trying to sound normal. I guess it was for the girls, which is why I let go of honey for a while. "Work was," I replied without the slightest hint. I was going to play along with her for now, but I wasn't going to pretend like nothing had happened. She nodded slightly, as if accepting the terms of our truce. "I made you a plate. It's in the microwave. It probably tastes better warm, but you weren't here when we ate." I caught the tone in her voice when she said the last sentence. I wasn't here. Was that where she wanted to start? Was this her excuse for what she'd done? Whatever she'd done to my best friend? "Well, I had a long day at work. Gotta make money for the family," I replied. The look on her face was like she was biting her tongue. She had something to say. So did I. But we couldn't do it without warning the girls. For now, the ceasefire kept us from going to war, but it was coming. Next chapter. "So, are we finally going to talk about this?" asked Claire when the girls had gone to bed. I was sitting in my office going through things on my laptop. Her voice came from behind me. I turned my chair around so that I was face to face with her standing in the doorway. "Okay, fine," I said, exhaling. She walked in and closed the door behind her. She then walked over to the couch that was my temporary bed. "I just want to start by saying that I'm sorry. The last thing I want to do is hurt you. Things have just been crazy lately. I don't know what to say." "No, why don't you start by telling me about you and Doug?" I said, with surprising calm. "Frank, I don't want to hear about how sorry as hell you are, or about how you didn't mean to hurt me. That's not going to get me anything. If you want to help me, start by talking. Now tell me about your damn relationship with my ex-best friend." The anger began to build. Oddly enough, I felt some relief. For a minute, I felt like some kind of emotionless robot. I started to worry. "It started a year ago." She said it on the verge of tears. I leaned back in my chair, giving her a chance to continue. "Doug has always been there for me, so it probably started over a year ago. But I didn't start looking at him that way until a year ago. You were gone so often, especially after you got the promotion. I started to feel depressed about having to do everything myself. All the nights you were gone and the days you just weren't there." She threw me an accusing look, but then looked away. Then she continued. "Doug started helping me around the house, listening to me. He would come to me just to talk. He was nice." The bitch had the nerve to curl her lips in a nostalgic smile, as if the memories she was reliving were pleasant. The anger boiling inside me began to flare up. Her voice changed again from sweet and wistful to hard and bitter. "A couple times he even took me with him. Like that time you were supposed to invite me to your birthday party but forgot." At that moment, her eyes became like steel. Before that sentence, she had looked kind of remorseful. But when she said it, she took on a defiant look. Now I was furious. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You're right, Claire. I forgot about your birthday. Well, you showed me that. I forgot your birthday and you're entertaining my best friend. I guess that makes us even, right? We didn't entertain that night. For your information, that night I cried about how my husband never wants to be around me. And he was just listening. Do you hear that? He listened to me. If you want to use "you forgot my birthday" as an excuse, you've got a long way to go to make it work. She laughed incredulously, standing up. You think this whole thing started because you forgot about one birthday? What about anniversaries, dates, get-togethers with friends, vacations you had to cancel, and everything else that was pushed aside because it had nothing to do with the damn engine? What about all those nights you were here but weren't really here? She practically hovered over me, pointing at me as she spoke. The gloves were off now. We were getting into our trenches and preparing our attacks. You never answered the question. When did the damn thing start? I don't know, Frank. I think it was sometime in April. 6 months ago, about the time Doug stopped coming. So much for the mystery solved. Where? Huh? Where the hell did it happen? In my bed? On the couch? In a hotel room? Yes, she answered simply. I didn't understand the answer at first, but then I did. Fun had to be had in all three places. Probably in many others, too. Do you love him? My voice cracked when I asked that. Feelings of resentment began to overwhelm me. The anger at her betrayal was nothing compared to the pain I was beginning to feel again. For a while I had managed to hide it, hiding behind work and justified anger. But now, by asking the question and wanting to know the answer, I found myself open. Tears came to my eyes. I don't know. I think so. She said it reluctantly, averting her gaze. She knew what it was doing to me, and she was uncomfortable. Do you still love me? Another question that made me vulnerable. Yes, but it's not the same. Not the way I used to. Not the way I'm supposed to love a husband, I finished for her. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. We fell into silence after that. She walked over to the couch and sat on it. So what do we do now? She asked quietly, breaking the cold silence. All I could do was sigh and shake my head. What do you think we should do? I asked sharply, with pain in my voice. I knew what she wanted, what she was really asking for. She wanted me to work things out, for me to bless her to find happiness with Doug, or whatever it was she was going to do. But she wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I refused to swallow the bile of rejection and put up with it just to clear her conscience. To hell with her and the Doug she was writing. You want to leave? You want to end this marriage? Fine, you'll do it. You get a lawyer and serve me with divorce papers. You move out of the house and find a shitty apartment. You explain to the kids why our family's breaking up. You take the initiative. I don't do a damn thing. You started this train wreck. You will finish it. Frank? Don't Frank. Screw you, Claire. What did you think I was going to say? I hope you find your happiness? I'm sorry I forgot your damn birthday? I wish I was a better husband? What did you think was going to happen when you brought your cheating ass into this office? The words I spoke stung her. They hit her right in the heart. Just as intended. Her face lowered, and tears came to her eyes. But she lifted her chin. With eyes glistening with tears, she looked at me and said, I didn't know what to expect from Frank. Maybe we'll talk. Work some things out. Work things out like adults. But honestly, I don't expect much from you anymore. With that last sentence, she disappeared from my office. Next chapter. If my life had been like these stories, I would have been handed my papers the very next day. Then there would have been a few paragraphs about settlement deadlines. Then the next scene would have flashed by, and one of us would have moved out and continued our miserable existence. If only it were that simple. Claire found a lawyer about a week later. If you think the fact that she found a lawyer was painful to me, try living with the knowledge that she was actively seeking one. Watch her sit at her laptop with a strained gaze, scrolling through search terms as she stops at one and clicks on it. Then, a moment later, she'd cast an awkward glance at me and leave the room, bringing her cell phone with her. I agreed that she was serious and started looking for a lawyer myself. Sarah, my assistant, pointed me to Terrence Ross. Our company had a law firm and he was our appointed attorney. For the most part, he kept us out of court and worked within the law, at least on paper. He wasn't a divorce lawyer, but because he was part of a larger firm, he could make some recommendations and talk to people on my behalf. This would allow me to find someone who could help me. I made an appointment and met with him at his office. As soon as his secretary announced my presence, he came out to greet me. "Mr. Underwood, it's good to see you. Please come in and have a seat," he said, shaking my hand. He then led me into his office and pointed to a chair in front of a massive desk. I sat down in the chair. "So, what brings us here today?" he asked, opening his notebook and picking up an expensive pen from the desk. "Well, Mr. Ross, my wife is filing for divorce, or at least she's going to file. She just found a lawyer, so I'm sure it's all set." He nodded his head understandingly, making some notes. "I see. Well, I recently went through a rough divorce myself. I know what it's like." I nodded. A look of pity appeared on his face. But there was something else in it too. He understood. "So tell me, was there infidelity, abuse, gambling problems?" "Yes, so no abuse, no gambling, infidelity. She cheated on me." "Hmm. Did she give a reason for her infidelity?" I snorted with laughter. "Said I worked too much and was never around her." He snorted too and shook his head. "Been there and done that. You work hard to provide them with a luxurious life and it's not enough. Honestly, I don't know what they want. They want a successful man, but they also want him to always be willing to do every little thing they want." I sighed and nodded in agreement. It was nice to have someone understand how I felt. "So, Mr. Ross, please call me Terry." "Thank you, Terry. Feel free to call me Frank." "Okay, Frank." "So, I guess the only question I have is, what do I do now?" He leaned back in his chair, and I swear there was a wicked grin on his face, like a shark smelling blood. "Well, from what I can tell, I'll say you need to make a list of your assets. I'm not telling you to hide what you can, but—" I nodded as he continued. "The ones that aren't will probably be split between the two of you. Like I said, I went through this not too long ago. But I think the most important thing you need to do is ask yourself what you want out of this divorce. Do you want to destroy her, or just tactically split up and go your separate ways?" He seemed a little too keen on the idea of destroying her. I guess that's what good lawyers are supposed to be like. Terry and the law firm he worked for had been on my company's reserve for the longest time. Terry was the lawyer they assigned to us for a reason. When our company came under fire, they sent him. Problems tended to disappear when he got involved. "What are my options?" I asked him. He smiled broadly, as if he was expecting me to ask that. "Frank, as you know, I'm not a divorce lawyer. I mostly defend your company against lawsuits and do other things that keep it shiny and sparkling clean, avoiding things like patent infringement, code violations, and things like that. But I know some people I can refer you to. Who I refer you to depends on what you want out of it. I can send you a Navy SEAL or a Marine." "I don't understand," said I in confusion. He grinned slightly, as if he didn't expect me to understand. "A SEAL, as I like to call my coworker Mike, is a guy who gets the job done. He doesn't kill more than necessary. One shot, one kill. He's the guy you send to resolve a situation peacefully with minimal bloodshed. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty, but he makes as little noise as possible. Have you ever heard of Navy SEALs on the news? We haven't. The only team you've really heard of is SEAL Team 6, and that's only because their target was so infamous. Americans needed to hear about bin Laden's death. If it wasn't for that, you wouldn't even know they existed. This is Mike. Walked in, completed the mission, walked out. He's so good that I've seen opposing spouses thank him for being so nice, like he did them a favor. But in reality, he got his client the best deal possible. He just did it with a smile. Phil, he's a Marine. Marines are dirty guys. They gut, kill, and destroy everyone who gets in their way. After they kill, they stick around and make sure everything stays dead. They don't leave until the war is over because the whole war is their mission. Phil will let you know that he is coming to take you down, and then laugh at your corpse. His first tactic is to go for the jugular. No advanced preparation, no gradualism. I've never heard of a pleasant divorce when it comes to him. All I had to do was nod and wait for him to continue. Both are good for their purposes. Neither one is better than the other. They just have different missions. If you need someone to resolve a situation, do it carefully and not scorch the earth. I can offer you, Mike. But if you want your wife to crawl away with bloody stumps, then I can send you to Phil. He seemed to like his analogy. He had probably given similar examples many times before. However, as much as Claire had hurt me, I didn't like the image of her crawling away with bloody stumps. I'm not sure what I want right now. I guess it's up to her, I said finally. He sighed, looking at me with a kind of pity. Okay, Frank, I get it. Believe me when I tell you that ending a marriage is hard. I've been there. His eyes clouded over for a second, as if he was remembering his own battle, but he quickly brushed it off. Just remember there's a difference between patience and procrastination. In cases like divorce, usually the one who isn't afraid to strike first ends up getting what they want. When my ex-wife Christina decided she wanted a divorce, I sat back and hoped she would change her mind. I started trying to win her back. I sent her flowers, jewelry, poems, and everything else. But she was determined. I ended up being unprepared and she took after me. If you want to wait to see if she goes to her SEAL or Marine, you may find yourself at a disadvantage like I did. Don't wait too long before making a decision. I thanked him and shook his hand, getting ready to leave. He walked me to the door of his huge office and escorted me out, handing me his business card. Call me when you've made your decision. Good luck, he said, patting me on the back. I walked out of his office feeling even worse than when I entered it. By putting the divorce case to Claire's side, I had put the entire burden on her. To be honest, I'd secretly hoped she'd realize she didn't need it. But as I watched her seek advice with such fervor, I realized how badly she really wanted to end it with me. Now that I was on the verge of making my own decision, everything seemed so bleak. Did she love me at all? Did she love me at all? For me, sitting in that office and talking to Terry about the bloodshed with which I wanted to end my marriage was torture. It made me pause and think about what I was doing with my marriage. Claire didn't seem to suffer from any such indecision. She was at full throttle. I'll admit that she was doing her best not to be a complete bitch, but she had no qualms about what she was doing. The only obstacle for her was how it would affect me. She wanted a divorce. She wanted to get rid of me. What were my options? Try to win her back? Quit my job? Or start doing what my engineering brain told me to do? The next logical step. Hide assets, protect my investments, prepare for the inevitable. My brain was giving me a to-do list of paramount importance. But I couldn't get rid of the last hope. That's what kept me from making a decision. By waiting for her next move, instead of taking the initiative myself, I was leaving room for her to change her mind. I didn't want to make the situation worse than it should have been. If she was in doubt about something, I didn't want my actions to push her into it. Hope is the quintessential human delusion, simultaneously the source of your greatest strength and your greatest weakness. Architect. Matrix Reloaded. Isn't that the truth? Next chapter. The next morning, I went into the bedroom we shared to look for clothes to wear to work. But what happened was that we got down to it. And while we were doing it, at one point she screamed, "Yes, Doug, yes." Have you ever quickly cooled a red-hot metal? When metal is white-hot, it's easier to manipulate. You can bend it into any shape you want with pressure. But once it cools, it becomes hard. It can't be bent. The only thing pressure can do at that point is break it. That's exactly what happened to my heart. It was hypothermic. The excitement I was feeling instantly turned into a sick, gut-wrenching, agonizing realization. It was literally like a sharp, piercing blow to my chest. My heart's attachment to this false hope was finally shattered. I had lost her. My marriage was over. All that was left was a heart that shattered under the pressure. I got out of bed and walked out of the room. I think she tried to call out to me, but I didn't listen. I ran into the safety of my office, slammed the door shut, and cried, "Frank, I'm so sorry. I was half asleep. I didn't realize," was heard from the doorway. Turning around, I saw my wife standing there looking at me with pain in her eyes. I didn't even realize she had walked in. "Get out! Get out!" I yelled, pushing her out and slamming the door in her face. Next chapter. I pounded on the apartment door like I was a cop coming in for a raid. Doug, get your ass out of here, you traitorous bastard. Neighbors started looking out of windows and opening doors to see what all the commotion was about. But I didn't care about them. I had only one goal: to drive my fist into Doug's face as many times as it took to make myself feel better. I heard my cell phone ring. Looking at the display, I saw it was Claire. Calling to save your lover. I guess he's calling you to save him. Claire's desperate voice came through my earpiece. No, Frank, I'm calling to save you. Doug called the cops. They're on their way over there to arrest you. If you don't want to go to jail, leave. Think of your girls. The bitch had the nerve to lecture me about thinking about my girls. After everything that had brought me to this asshole's door, she saw fit to make me think rationally about how my actions would affect my family. Really? I hope you realize the irony of telling me to think about what I'm doing to this family. Eat shit, Claire. She sighed impatiently. Well, at least think about what going to prison could mean for your clearance. You know how fussy they are, Frank. Going to jail could put you under the microscope for months. How will that affect your work? She was right. Shit. I couldn't lose my job over this. My marriage was toast as it was. I didn't want to lose the one thing that was keeping me sane right now. My silence elicited a sardonic laugh from her. That's right. Do the right thing for your job, if not for your family. At least you know what's important. Claire, go to hell, and take your damn boyfriend with you, I said, hanging up the phone. I headed to my car, but I still had one last thing to say to my former best friend. This isn't over, Doug. Can you hear me, you traitorous asshole? As I raced away, tears threatened to flood my eyes again. Screw it. I wasn't going to cry over this shit. I was tired. Tired of hoping, praying to some apathetic deity to wake my wife up and make her love me. She wants Doug, not me. I saw her face on my phone screen a few more times, indicating she was trying to call me. I ignored every single one. She was the last person I wanted to talk to right now. As I rounded the corner, completely ignoring the stop sign, I saw something move in front of me. My brain focused on a reality that took my breath away. In front of me was a mother and her child crossing the street. And I was speeding toward them. I slowed down and saw their faces turn into masks of horror. They froze right in front of me, paralyzed with fear. My tires squealed loudly, clinging to the pavement. Please, God, no. Something must have heard me somewhere because my car stopped after driving a few centimeters. My mother's face went from a panicked woman on the verge of death to a crazed maniac. Are you crazy? You almost killed us. What is your problem? She went on for another minute, but I was grateful that her child was there for her. I could see that for his sake she was holding back her tongue. Still, there was no hiding the venom in her voice. No amount of apologizing could calm her down. I guess telling someone you're sorry for almost hitting her and her baby with 2 tons of steel seems a bit insignificant. We parted ways and I drove somewhere, with caution, to park. I was in no condition to get behind the wheel. My nerves were on edge. My mind was a mess with thoughts of pain, revenge, rage, and betrayal intertwined. I wasn't myself. I was someone else. I'm usually a logical person. Always prepared, always have a plan. But not this guy. Running to this asshole's house, calling him names like a bully on the playground after school? That wasn't me. I needed to get my head on straight. It was time to accept the facts. My marriage was over. Kaput. There was no saving us, no hope of redemption. It was time to pull the trigger. Take it out of her hands and put the ball back in her court. I'm done. I pulled an intricately designed card from my wallet. His office address, phone number, and a brief quote were superimposed over a picture of a stern-looking Terry. He looked like the bulldog he was. Typing his number into my phone, I waited for a response. A pleasant-looking receptionist greeted me, informing me that I had reached Terrence Ross's office. When she put me through to him, I said only one thing. Send me that goddamn Marine. Part 2. Frank, what happened? Asked Terry with concern in his voice. Who cares what happened? Send me that damn Marine. I want that bitch's inside scattered all over the place. My voice was impassive, yet filled with venom and anger, if such a thing was even possible. Like a serial killer trying to explain to his victim why he was doing what he was doing. There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought I'd hung up. Terry? Yeah, I'm here, Frank. Tell me what happened. I sighed in frustration, emotion finding an outlet in my voice. She called that asshole's name. When were about to make love. She screamed his name. Saying those words out loud made me feel even more humiliated. Look, Frank, a lot has happened and you need to realize it. Your emotions are running high. Why don't you go to a hotel? Don't even come home to pack. You need to get away from her for a while and clear your head. I was silent. He heard my silence and decided he needed some more convincing. Now is not the time to make a decision, Frank. I've seen this happen over and over again. Trust me, it doesn't end well for anyone, least of all the children. Why are you asking me if I want to be a Navy SEAL or a Marine, Terry? Why even give me the choice to destroy this bitch if you're going to dismiss me? I spat out in anger. Terry took a deep breath. Look, Frank, if you wanted to kill her from the start, I would have given you his number right away. But your indecision shows me that you care about what happens to your wife after this is over. The fact that you made such a drastic change in such a short period of time shows that you are not thinking clearly. Decisions made on the brink of such circumstances are always regretted. Trust me. I began to calm down and come to my senses. He was right. The last thing I wanted, despite my current mood, was to turn this into a war zone with collateral damage. Namely, my children. No matter what Claire thought of me, I loved my girls. I didn't want them to be any worse off than they had to be. Still, I wanted that bitch and her boyfriend to pay. They deserved retribution for what they had done to me. What am I going to do, Terry? I'm dying here. I'm lying here with my heart shattered into a million pieces and they're acting like it's my fault. What am I supposed to do? I put my head on the steering wheel and sat like that for a while, feeling the pain. My world was spinning out of control and I had nothing to hold on to. That's the worst feeling for someone who is always in control. I'll tell you what, I heard his voice. I'm going to do something completely unethical. I'm going to send you an address. You're going to meet me there. You're going to need a drink. Maybe even something else. I don't think so, Terry. Frank, it's out of the question. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'll have a table ready for us by the time you get there. See you soon. With those words, he cut the connection as if there was nothing more to talk about. 2 minutes later, my phone rang with a message. Next chapter. Sales Gentleman's Lounge. Is he serious? A strip club? My life had been uprooted. My sense of self is in question. And he thinks a lap dance will make me feel better? What can I do for you, sweetheart? A woman with glittery makeup asked me in a sultry voice. I'm here to meet a friend. He's my lawyer, actually. Well, not my lawyer, but... I stuttered. I know. I took a deep breath and calmly said, I'm here to meet a man named Terry, or Mr. Ross. The beautiful woman chuckled and put her hand on my chest to reassure me. Her smile was infectious. I realized I'd made a fool of myself. You're Frank, and I'm Starlet. Terry told me to keep an eye on you. He's in the VIP section. He wanted me to bring you to him when you got here. I breathed a sigh of relief that I could stop talking. She waved her finger nonchalantly, indicating that I should come with her. Follow me, sugar. The VIP section is right down these stairs. She pointed to the narrow hallway that contained the staircase. Above it hung a sign that read, Champagne Room. When we go up, I fully expect you to be looking at my ass. I'll be very offended if you're not. Did I get that right? I couldn't help but smile at her. Yes, ma'am, I said with a fake greeting. She smiled seductively and winked at me, leading me up the stairs. I tried my best not to offend her. There he is, thundered Terry, raising his glass to greet me as I entered the room. He was surrounded by several beautiful women. Unlike the downstairs, which was full of lecherous men and drunken assholes, this area was almost secluded. There were no flashing lights of the main section here. The lighting became soft. The loud music was replaced by smooth jazz. Starlet took my hand and led me over to Terry. I see you've met Starlet, he said, smiling broadly as we approached. I nodded embarrassed. Yes, we've met. She answered for me. Frank and I are good friends. Right, Frank? She asked. The best. I managed to pull myself out. I was pleasantly surprised to hear that the sarcasm I intended to express had gotten through to her. She laughed and nudged me with her shoulder. Okay, sit down, Frank. Sit down, he said, pointing to the chair across from him. I sat down in the indicated seat. Strip club? I don't suppose a lawyer would take his client to a strip club? Well, first of all, you're not my client. I don't represent you in any open cases. You are a friend of mine. However, I think it would be best if we never talk about this after tonight. I nodded in understanding. Secondly, he continued, I need to clear your head, distract you for a while by misleading you. You have a huge decision to make and you need to be in a clear mind. But we'll talk about that a little later. In the meantime, enjoy the wonderful entertainment of these gorgeous young ladies. So, which one would you like to dance with first? I looked at Starlet, and her eyes met mine. I was silent for a while, but the meaning of my words was clear. Good choice, she said, took my hand gently, and led me to a secluded corner of the room. After about an hour, Terry led the girls out of the room and put on his businesslike face. Now that your thoughts are clear, let's talk. I want you to think about what you want from all of this. After the dust settles, what can you live with? If you're going to use nuclear weapons, you need to be sure that's what you want. I nodded, taking a sip of the stale, warm beer that had been on the table for a while. I don't know. I guess I want things to be fair. But most of all, I want my kids to be safe from all of this. You know? He smiled understandingly and patted me on the back. I raised my eyes to the ceiling and sighed. Give me the seal. I just want this to be over. I need to move on. He held out another card to me, just like when we'd met in his office. It wasn't as artfully designed as his, but it had all the information I needed on it. Call Mike tomorrow. I'll tell him to expect you. With those words, he began to put on his jacket and tie the tie that dangled around his neck without a care. Do you miss her, Terry? Your ex? Do you wish things had turned out differently? I asked curiously. A sad expression appeared on his face as he paused, dressing. Every day, he said dejectedly. What happened to Christina? Did she ever regret leaving you? Pain froze in his eyes again. No, Frank. Honestly, I couldn't expect her to. I wasn't the best husband. I worked all the time, and when I was home, I was gone. You know? I guess I can understand that, I said, reflecting on my own marriage. He saw me going down that path and interrupted me. Frank, you're nothing like me. Trust me. I cheated on my wife with my secretary. Think about it. I've been caught cheating with my secretary. I did it dozens of times, and I was in no danger. I treated her like property, not a wife. And she just sat there and took it. I thought she was the perfect wife. I thought I had the perfect life. I could do whatever I wanted and come home to her like nothing had happened. He let out a self-deprecating chuckle that could have passed for laughter. Why don't you try to get her back? You still seem to love her. The pain in his eyes intensified, if that was even possible. I did love for a while, but it didn't work out. She was lied to so many times that everything I said automatically became a lie. Hell, even I started to believe my own lies. There was a time when I really thought she was cheating on me. I hired a private investigator and everything. I was ready to scorch the ground around her and piss on her corpse. And what happened? Well, it turned out she had the same suspicions about me. Only her suspicions turned out to be correct. The funny thing is, I hadn't even considered cheating on her, but when I decided that she had done it, I was furious. Long story short, she left me. Then she met another guy, a school teacher. Last year they got married. You know what the worst part is? I know she's better off with him. I'm a lawyer who makes a lot of money, and she's better off with a school teacher who drives a Ford Focus. How do you respond to that? Immersed in the memories, he mentally brushed them away and walked over to the mirror to continue tidying himself up. You know, he said, looking at me through my reflection in the mirror. A sly smirk appeared on his face. Starlet doesn't just do lap dances. She has other services she offers. Wait a minute. What other services does Starlet offer? He chuckled, turning to face me. Let's just say she's a very sensual woman and knows how to relieve stress. I realized what he was getting at. I'm not an idiot. You say services like she does it for money? He looked at me with a sly smirk, as if I finally realized what he was talking about. You mean she's a woman who likes to help men? He finished for me. I tried to wrap my mind around that. I mean, it wasn't out of the realm of reality, but still. Have you ever relieved her of stress for money? Of course not, Frank. It's illegal to exchange money for favors, but Starlet and I are two consenting adults who have done it a couple times. Did you pay her? No, I told you, it's illegal. I'm a lawyer. But I may have lent her money on occasion. It's just that she hasn't paid me back yet. I have to admit, with this new information, I look at Starlet a little differently. I mean, I know she's a stripper and all, but I didn't think of her as a prostitute. I thought I felt something. A connection with her. Chemistry. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't ready to give her my ring or start walking her to school, but I felt like there was a spark between us. Our playful banter, the hand-holding, the way she looked at me. It seemed to mean something. Maybe I was projecting. She was flirting with me, but wasn't that her job? I guess I wouldn't judge it at a time like this anyway. On the other hand, the thought of Starlet and I going at it was intriguing. Very intriguing. But I wasn't ready for anything like that, much less pay for it. It just seemed so wrong to me. I'm sure Starlet was worth every penny. But with everything that was going on, I couldn't bring myself to do it. So, you want me to send Starlet upstairs? Asked Terry one last time. I shook my head. No, I need to go myself. I still have a lot to do. But thanks for reassuring me, Terry. I needed it. I really appreciate everything you've done for me. Anytime, Frank. And good luck. Next chapter. The next morning, Doug opened the door to his office and nearly crapped his pants when he saw me sitting in the chair behind his desk. What the hell? Good morning, Doug, I said with exaggerated cordiality. Frank, how the hell did you get in here? You have 10 seconds to get out before I call security, he said, pulling out his cell phone. Put the damn phone down, Doug. I just want to talk. You owe me. I put my hands up in the air, showing peaceful intentions. He looked at me thoughtfully. I don't want any trouble, Frank. If you want to talk, we can do that. But this is my job. You can't come in here and cause me problems. I wanted to run across the room and stab him with my spear like a linebacker, but I knew that would give me a one-way ticket to jail. I was in his territory. He had home court advantage. Plus, I wasn't going to get any answers. I needed to hear something from him. Unfortunately, he had to be awake to give me those answers. Yep, you have the damn nerve to tell me I can't cause you problems, just chutzpah. At least he had the decency to look somewhat mortified. Frank, I'm sorry about what happened, I really am. It's eating me up. It took everything I had to stay where I was. Does it gnaw at him? Suddenly, his feelings meant something in this situation? Are you sorry, Doug? What are you sorry for? For stabbing me in the back? For taking away the one thing I would never share with you? For ruining my marriage? For destroying my family? Or for throwing away 13 years of friendship? You've got to break it down for me, Doug, because an apology can cover a whole bunch of ground. Look, Frank, I understand why you're upset, but I'm sorry. Did you just say you understand why I'm upset? You sound like customer service when they get the order wrong. Screw you. Do you have the slightest clue? Do you really understand why I feel betrayed by a man I used to call a friend? I do understand, Frank. No, you don't understand. Don't you dare say you understand it. You'll never understand how I feel right now. I trusted you. In a burst of uncontrollable anger, my fist slammed into his desk. The sound echoed through the office, reverberating off the walls and looming over us. At least that's what it sounded like to me. I was so emotional, I was practically vibrating. What you did hurt me not only because you stole my wife, you also stole 13 years of friendship, 10 years of marriage, and you don't care about that. He paused to gather his thoughts. It must not be easy to prove yourself right when you're wrong yourself. I know what happened is hard for you. I really betrayed you. I regret it more than anything, but... He paused, about to speak. But what? You were never there for her. She needed you and you weren't there for her. I jumped up from my seat and marched across the room until we were face to face. To his credit, he didn't flinch or back away. What's more, he stared at me with the same intensity I was staring at him. You want to know why, Frank? Why I did what I did? Okay, I'll tell you. Because you didn't deserve her. You had a wonderful woman at home who just wanted attention, and you didn't care. Night after night, she waited for you to pay attention to her. But you were always at work. You never had time for her, for your children. Face it, Frank, you don't need a family. It took every ounce of self-control I had not to punch him in the face with my fist. I was so angry, I imagined what I wanted to do to him. You bastard, is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? You tell yourself that old Frank figured it out? If you didn't get it, I had to work. You think because you could run up and tell Claire how beautiful she is? You know something about taking care of a family? About being a husband? How do you think we got this big house we live in? Huh? You think Claire got the Lexus RX for free? Where do you think the money came from to pay for all this shit? I spoke with such force that my mouth was leaking saliva. But Doug still wasn't going to back down, let alone apologize. He stood his ground. He genuinely believed he had a legitimate claim. Bullshit, Frank, bullshit. You and I both know you're not an hourly employee. What's that got to do with it? You could have gone home at any time. You get paid the same whether you work 50 hours or 80. You were there because you wanted to be there. Even in the heat of this argument, I couldn't deny the truth in his words. It made me pause. He took the pause as a sign that he had made a valid point and put his heels in the sand even more. You could have made time for her if you wanted to, Frank. But you didn't. You didn't try to make your marriage normal. He was so full of righteous indignation. I think that was my biggest problem with the situation. Both he and Claire had no remorse because they thought they were right. I took a step back and tried a different approach. Doug, tell me, when is Claire's period? No. My voice was so calm compared to how it had been a few seconds ago that it threw him off balance a bit. He looked puzzled. Why would I want to know that? I continued. What is Kelly allergic to? Stacy has nightmares after watching one movie, but she still watches it every time it's on TV. What is it? He was still standing there with a perplexed look on his face. I was on a roll. I'm going to ask you some simple questions, Doug. What's Kelly's favorite dish, or Stacy's? I don't see what that has to do with anything. I laughed sardonically. Of course you don't get it, Doug. You're busy entertaining my wife, telling her how wonderful she is. But here's what you don't know. Claire, Kelly, Stacy, they're one and the same. You can't have Claire without having them too. The fact that you've been entertaining my wife for 6 months now and haven't even tried to get to know my girls better tells me something about you. He looked like he'd swallowed a cockroach, but I wasn't done with him yet. You think you know her because the two of you laugh after you've been in bed for a while, but you don't know shit about marriage. I was with her when she gave birth to my daughters. In fact, she almost died giving birth to Kelly. I was with her at her aunt's funeral. Do you know who her aunt was? She was who Claire ran to whenever her mother was too drunk to cook a meal for her and her little sister. But you didn't know that. It's easy to love someone between the sheets. It's what comes afterward that makes a marriage strong. He'd finally found his voice, and it wasn't as confident and assured as it had been when he'd flogged me. Frank, Leave it alone, Doug. You can't tell me a damn thing. If you can do what you did to me after 13 years of friendship, what do you think you can do to Claire and my girls? How can you even think you have what it takes to keep your marriage and family together? If you cared about my family the way you think you do, the thought of hurting my girls would kill you from the inside out. You would do what I'm doing. You would swallow your bile and put what you want to do on the back burner. You would do that because the thought of hurting them would outweigh your desire to get what you want. But, we both know that the only thing you wanted from my family was to entertain Claire. I started to walk out of his office. As I reached the door, I heard him say, I love her, Frank. Believe it or not, I love her. I stopped and shook my head. Without turning around, I said, I don't want to see you again, Doug. This is your only warning. One day there will come a time when the guards and police can't help you. You will answer for it. Probably not today or tomorrow, but it will happen. With those words, I left him alone. For now. Next chapter. As the weeks turned into months, the divorce began to gain momentum. Claire found a lawyer, Syl, much to my relief, and things got underway. I continued to stay in the house, as did she. We didn't see the need for separate housing, at least for the time being. I had no problem using my office as my permanent sleeping space. We had come to a sort of truce about the whole thing. The hurt and anger still lingered in me, but it was like a dull ache. But there were times when it flared up, an overheard giggle when she was on her cell phone, or a strange gift I knew I hadn't given her, were the triggers. We fought a few times, but after a while these incidents subsided. I accepted my family's fate and began to reconcile with her. We socialized with each other when necessary. Dinner, socializing with the girls, etc. We didn't want to embarrass the girls, so we tried to keep up appearances for their sake. We never crossed the proverbial line in the sand that we drew, that is, any form of intimacy, but we were friendly, at least outwardly. All in all, it was the best shitty situation one could hope for. I know it's cliché for a divorced man to throw himself into work, but for me that would have been unnecessary. The only difference in the amount of time I spent at work was the freedom from guilt. I hadn't seen Doug or heard from him since we met. I didn't expect to. After 13 years of friendship, some part of me missed him. Not really him, but the camaraderie that bonded us. Or I thought we did. I don't make friends easily. Sadly, he and Claire were the only two people I considered friends. I wasn't involved in activities that required more than one person, so meeting new people was problematic for me. My main hobby was solving complex work-related problems. As for Claire, I tried to stay out of her business. I didn't ask if she was seeing Doug, but I had my suspicions. She was often off somewhere, justifying her absence with lightly veiled phrases. It started with her coming to me and asking questions that were supposed to be innocuous. These questions concerned my plans for the evening. Then she would tell me about plans she had made that she had forgotten about. Sometimes she would go out with friends, and sometimes she would spend the evening with myself. She knew that I knew. I could see it in her eyes as she gave me her paper-thin explanations. She wasn't really trying to hide it or deceive. In her mind, she was free. The marriage was only held together by the long wait for that paper that would formalize the divorce. I think she was trying to leave me with dignity without throwing it in my face. She didn't leave the house fully dressed and wearing makeup like she was going on a date. She tried not to make it too obvious, but at the same time, she didn't insult my intelligence by going out of her way to make me buy it. In a way, I was grateful to her for at least that kind of attention. But it also didn't help quell the anger. I was also a little jealous. It had to do with entertaining my best friend, but there was another part that made me jealous. She was here, with a bright new prospect of love ahead of her, and I was stuck alone. On one hand, I didn't mind the loneliness, but on the other hand, it annoyed me that she had the opportunity to move on with her life and I didn't. But there was nothing I could do about it. She was no longer my wife. She didn't have to honor her vows. Heck, she'd already gotten them down to earth as it was. She didn't need to be any more faithful in the divorce than she had been when we were married. And yet it stung. It seemed like I was the only one going through the pain of a broken marriage. Claire had gotten a pass from heartbreak and was having fun finding new love. And me? I had a job. Things probably would have continued the way they were until the decision to divorce came. But life has a way of shaking you up sometimes. One evening, Claire was out with friends, and I was sitting in my office practicing algorithms as usual. Stacy, my 8-year-old daughter, walked into my office. "Daddy, Mrs. Benson said she needs money tomorrow. Mommy forgot to give it to me. Do you have it?" she asked, walking up to me. "Money for what, honey?" I asked, picking her up in my arms and sitting her on my lap. "For my cheerleading uniform and pom-poms." She said it surprised, as if I should have already known that. I remembered that Claire had told me that Stacy wanted to do cheerleading. I didn't think anything of it because I didn't know they had cheerleading for 8-year-olds. Apparently they do. I didn't know that it went from her wanting to do cheerleading to her actually needing money for uniforms. "Oh yeah, money for cheerleading. Now I remember." I lied through my teeth. She smiled and kissed my cheek. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, getting off my lap. Before she walked out, I asked, "Honey, how much did that cost?" And I expected her to say something in the neighborhood of 40 to 50,000. How much could a cheerleading uniform cost for an 8-year-old girl? I almost choked when she answered, $198.99. She pronounced each syllable with pride, but even her sweet voice didn't make that number any better. As soon as she left the room, however, I was engaged in a battle with an entirely different demon. I didn't even realize she was in the cheerleading squad. What kind of father has no idea what his daughter is doing? That thought kept me on my toes. What annoyed me even more was that if I had missed her activities, nothing terrible would have happened. Claire, I'm sure, would have found an excuse for me. My daughter would have gotten an explanation like, "Daddy's busy, but he says hi." But she shouldn't have done that. Claire should not be put in a position where my daughter has to understand why Daddy can't be around. The children of the military should understand that. Their fathers and mothers are fighting for our country. Their absence really means something. And I'm here in the same city and state as my daughters, and they have to understand why their dad doesn't have time for them? But I work hard for them, to give them the life I never had. That's not right. You work hard for yourself. You like to work hard. More than your family. You're at work because that's where you really want to be. Is that true? Of course it's true. I knew it. I've always known it. I hid behind the excuse that I was doing it for my family, but I couldn't maintain that lie any longer. Working 80 hours a week didn't make me any more money than working 50. I didn't have to come home and keep working. I did it because I loved my job more than I loved my family. That's not true. I love my family. If I had to choose between saving my family and my job, what would I choose? Hell, I've already made that choice. All the times Claire begged me to spend time with her. All the vacations I'd canceled because there was a problem I thought no one could solve but me. All the birthdays I missed. I always chose work over family. And now my family was taken away from me, and it didn't even make me miss a beat. I guess this situation was a kind of karmic justice for me. As much of an asshole as Doug was, he was right about one thing. During our marriage, I had almost always chosen work over Claire. Now the seeds of imbalance I'd once sown had sprouted into a full-fledged tree. My family was slipping away from me, and I had no choice but to spend my time at work. Looking at your reflection without closing your eyes is very scary. That's exactly what I did, figuratively speaking. And I saw a monster. Maybe not the kind of monster who harms his children, but a monster nonetheless. I was a monster who thought I was a hero. The harm I did to my children was justified because I was making good money. I could brush it off and still say I loved them. In my mind, I didn't need to be there to show them love. I could just buy it to ease my guilt about wanting to be somewhere else. I closed the lid of my laptop, shutting down my work. I'd deal with that tomorrow. Right now, I had more important things to do. "Girls," I shouted, walking out of the office. "Who wants to go out for pizza and ice cream?" The shouts of joy made me smile. It was music to my ears. Next chapter. 911. Call me immediately. The girls are gone. I thought you were staying home with them. Come home so we can find them. This was the desperate message I received as the girls and I sat in the restaurant. There was a half-eaten pizza and 3 empty ice cream bowls lying between us. My daughters had barely taken a bite of each pizza before they started asking for dessert. The funny thing is, they were too full to finish their dinner, yet found the strength to completely destroy the frozen treat. The girls are safe. They're with me. I rushed back to Claire. "Thank God," I replied. I was about to put my phone away when another text came in. "Did you go out with the girls?" I didn't reply to it. You see, my girls were just serenading me with Let It Go from the movie Frozen. They were shouting out the words of the song in a unified voice as loud as they could. Perhaps I'm biased, but I thought they sounded better than they did in the cartoon version. I looked around, expecting to see annoyed customers, but I saw a restaurant full of smiling people looking at my daughters and cheering them on. Kelly and Stacy were singing their hearts out, completely oblivious to the audience they had. I used my phone and started recording. I noticed that several people, most likely parents of kids my daughter's age, were mouthing the words of the song along with them. When the girls ended the song with the cheeky phrase, "The cold never bothered me," the entire restaurant exploded with applause and cheers. What the girls did next amazed me. Usually when one realizes that one has an unexpected audience in front of them, one is embarrassed. Stacy, clearly not shy like her father, rose from her seat and bowed. Kelly soon joined her, and both performers gave a unified bow to their adoring fans. I don't think I've ever witnessed something as beautiful and as funny at the same time as the sight of my daughters bowing and kissing, as if they had just finished a Broadway production. That's what I've been missing, all these years. I couldn't stop smiling. My girls, my beautiful girls, were growing up so fast, and they were freaking amazing. While I was constantly trying to make the engine better or improve the latest stats, I was missing precious moments like this one. What if I hadn't done that today? What if I had just stayed home like I've done countless times and started pounding away at the keyboard? I would still be blind. What if more years had passed before I woke up? How long would Kelly and Stacy stay so young and innocent? Yeah. I realized I didn't want to look back in years to come and not have memories of moments like that. When my girls come home with boyfriends and fiancés, I want to embarrass them with stories about tonight and others like it. When things quieted down, I paid the check and we left. When we got in the car, Stacy said, "Thanks for the ice cream, Daddy. I love it when you take us out." "You're welcome, sweetie. Thanks for the song." She giggled. "You're welcome. You're the best daddy ever." Moments later, my girls were sound asleep. I drove the rest of the way home in silence. The best daddy in the world. Children very rarely see their parents' faults while they are young. No matter how much we neglect them and sideline them, they still think we walk on water, even when we aren't. Pulling up to the driveway, I sent Claire a text. In the driveway, the girls are asleep. Need help? Moments later, Claire came out and grabbed Kelly. She instantly wrapped her arms and legs around Claire. Stacy did the same to me as I lifted her up. We carried our daughters to their rooms. After tucking them in, we met in the hallway. "So you stopped work to walk with them. I bet they loved it." "What did you do?" she asked, unable to hide the surprise in her voice. "We went out for pizza and ice cream, and then they sang me a serenade." I couldn't help but laugh at that memory. You should have seen them, Claire. They were amazing. The whole restaurant sang along with them. And then when everyone applauded, they stood up and bowed. They bowed. I've never seen anything like that. We laughed as I showed her the video. We had to cuddle up to each other so we could both watch it. Being so close to her felt weird after everything that had happened lately. She must have felt it too because she took a step back and gave me a quick glance. "I'm glad you spent time with Kelly and Stacy. That was really nice of you. You should do it more often. They'll need it when—" Her voice trailed off before she could finish the sentence. But she didn't need to do that. "Yeah, I know. I'm going to change some things." Tonight was an eye-opener for me. I don't want to miss out on their childhood. I've already lost you. I don't want to lose them. She looked at me strangely as if trying to figure out if I was joking or not. I sounded sincere and heartfelt, and she must have noticed that. There was a flicker of regret on her face, but it passed quickly. "No matter what you do, they'll love you. That's the way kids are." "Too bad adults aren't like that," I said without thinking. It was meant to sound under my breath, but I said it loud enough for her to hear. Regret flashed across her face again, and this time it didn't go away. "Frank, don't start—" I felt like apologizing, but I didn't. What was I supposed to apologize for? For telling the truth? I didn't want to hurt her, but that didn't make my words any less true. "Just help me understand, Claire. Was I really that bad? So bad that you stopped loving me? Do you really feel nothing because of that? You don't feel bad at all. Are you really asking me if I feel bad? Of course I feel bad. I feel like shit every time I think about it. All the plans we had, all the memories. I feel like a failure. On top of that, we can't keep this from the girls forever. One day, and very soon, we're going to have to tell them what's going on, and it's going to crush them. I feel bad that we're going to break their hearts, and it was my decision that set everything in motion." "So why? Why did you do it?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she stared up at the ceiling with her hands on her hips. "Because I got lonely, Frank. Plain and simple. I live in this big house. I have all the latest clothes. I drive a fancy car, and I'm miserable. All I wanted was a little time from you. That's all. Just little tokens of appreciation to let me know I mattered. But apparently, I was useless. I was so undesirable that my husband made time for everything else but me. And Doug does all this for you? She nodded in acknowledgement. Yes, he makes me feel wanted. He texts me to see how I'm doing. He sends me flowers. He likes being around me. Is that what you wanted to hear? That was the last thing I wanted to hear. But I wanted to. I had to know. I had to understand what he gave her that I didn't know. Now I understood. Once I'm out of the way, you two can be together. You can ride off into the goddamn sunset hand in hand. Don't do that, Frank. What's done is done. If you go down that road, it will only lead to more pain. I had to laugh, even though it was the furthest thing from a laughable statement. Are you serious? Are you seriously trying to tell me not to go down that road because it will only lead to more pain? You do realize that this road I'm walking down was paved by you, right? Her nose flared and her eyes narrowed. She poked me in the chest and said, "In case you've forgotten, you neglected me first." I couldn't hold back any longer. I couldn't swallow any more bile. You know what, Claire? I'm damn tired of you humming the same sad tune. In case you forgot, you cheated on me with my best friend. Do you really think anything I did justifies that? Do you really think I deserve to be hurt like this? She couldn't find anything to answer, which pretty much boded well for her. Only a complete sociopath would have answered that question with another defense. I wasn't done yet. Tonight, Claire opened my eyes. Tonight, I came face to face with my choices. I can see how I played a part in what we're doing now. But you sit there, crying about a bad husband who works too hard, and completely ignoring what you yourself brought to this. Tell me, have you even once suggested we go to counseling? Have you ever done anything to try to make things right? I came to you, Frank, and you ignored me. And what was your next move? Claire, because here's my thinking, my logic, if you will. When you have a project that isn't going the way you want it to, you think about the next step. If the project is worth saving and you believe in it, you look for alternatives to save it. Bringing in a fresh set of eyes to see if you've missed anything is the preferred option. Or you can abandon it altogether and start working on a new project, a more worthwhile one, because the old project just isn't worth the headache. So my question to you is, what was your next step? You would use an engineering analogy. That's all you're capable of thinking about, she said with a chuckle. Her eyes, however, were transparent. I realized I had hit the mark. Even she couldn't deny the logic of my words. Her attempt to mislead me was weak. The analogy fits and you know it. If this marriage was so important to you, why didn't you change tactics? Why didn't you invite a fresh set of eyes? Why didn't you offer to go to counseling? She immediately went on the defensive. You didn't suggest seeing a counselor either. I wasn't the one who was unhappy. I thought we were doing well. Maybe I was naive or inattentive, but I didn't see that our marriage was on the road to destruction. If I had, I would have tried to fix it. Because to me, our marriage was a project worth saving. But you... I held my gaze on her for a moment before I finished. I couldn't stop the look of disgust that appeared on my face. Nor did I want to. You saw our marriage rolling into the abyss and you watched it from afar. You let it hang out there, then you stepped up and pushed him down. And now you want to sit here and pretend you did everything you could to save him, like you had no other choice. But that shit's not going to get to Claire. You slept with my best friend. Not only did you have an affair, but you did it with the one person who would hurt me the most. You could have found anyone else to have fun with. But you chose Doug. No part of you felt that boundary was unacceptable. The two of you decided that my feelings no longer mattered. And you want to sit back and try to make what you did okay? Tears were already flowing freely down her face. But she still didn't answer anything. We both just stood there in frustrated silence. Alone. In the same room but separated by an impassable chasm created by years of neglect, apathy, and poor choices. What do you want me to say, Frank? Are you right? Am I sorry? Will that make you feel better? Another ploy to mislead. Let it have to do with my ego, my desire to punish her. But I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. You've given up trying, Claire. You've given up on our marriage. You have to face that. It was your choice. You left me with nothing to fight for, she finally whispered between sobs. I couldn't do this anymore. I was exhausted mentally and physically. I'm tired, Claire. I'm going to bed. With those words, I walked into my office and closed the door behind me. Next chapter. A couple weeks after that conversation, the papers arrived. Signed, sealed, delivered. It was official. My marriage was over. The divorce was fairly amicable. I don't want to downplay the pain of sitting down with lawyers and dividing up assets, but that doesn't make the story any more interesting. Both attorneys told me it was a fair divorce, although I wholeheartedly disagree. Sure, all of our material stuff was divided pretty fairly, except for the house, which went to her since she was the primary caretaker of the kids, but I seemed to get the lion's share of the emotional baggage. She also received monthly child support and spousal support from me. I was fine with child support, but paying spousal support to a woman who voluntarily split the family seemed like a kick in the balls. But there was no way around it. That's the beauty of a no-fault divorce. The only thing that comforted me was that if Mike hadn't been there would have been so much more. The first offer was 2/3 of my paycheck. Could I live on what was left? Sure. I was making a lot of money. I had a fair share of investments and other assets. I was able to hide some of those assets from her attorney, so I wasn't the stereotypical divorced husband who has to live like a pauper. However, I would have liked her to experience a little more discomfort over her choices. I also thought about my girls. I had to question the wisdom of the decision to shield them from impending doom by pretending that nothing had changed. Why we made that choice, I cannot understand. Now we could no longer hide it from them. Instead of preparing them in advance and getting them used to the idea, we had to suddenly pull the rug out from under their feet. As much as I would like to claim benevolent love as the reason for keeping the real situation in my marriage a secret from my children, I can't. At this point in my life, I've stopped hiding my failures behind a thin veil of selfless acts that went wrong, pretending that my poor decisions were made out of a misguided attempt to protect those I cared about. I was doing it because I was a coward, clearly. Claire had her reasons, probably the same ones I had, but I wasn't going to define my actions by what she admits to herself. She seems to have a great penchant for self-justification, and I couldn't afford to fall for that anymore. Tomorrow's man is made by those you choose today. That's what my father used to tell me. At the time, I was a teenager thinking about what I was missing in life, so I never really thought about what it meant. Now, however, those words have become a new way of looking at life for me. What kind of person did I want to be tomorrow? The person I am today is who I am because of the choice I made yesterday to put work before family. If I don't like that person, I have to make the choice to change it for tomorrow. I wanted to be a good father. I also wanted to be successful. Who says I couldn't have both? I didn't have to create an imbalance in my life that left room for only one or the other. Why couldn't I kill myself at work and then come home to my daughters, leaving work behind? So I did what I do best. I made a plan. An algorithm for my life. Believe it or not, math can solve about 90% of the problems we face in life. Of course, that's what an engineer thinks. But in this case, math was the key. If the problem you are facing is balance, isn't there an equation that can solve it? There are 24 hours in a day. 7 days a week. That's 168 hours. I'm used to spending 80 of those hours at work. That left 88 hours for everything else. My family had to share those 88 hours with all the other crap I had to deal with, including sleep. How had I never noticed this before? So I used simple math to determine what kind of person I wanted to be. And it only took 20 minutes. I had to earn my daughter's love and affection. They gave them no matter what I did. I had to be worthy of them. Next chapter. I heard sniffling coming from the room I shared with my ex-wife. The door was ajar, and all I had to do was nudge it open slightly. I saw Claire lying on her stomach in the middle of the queen-sized bed we'd once slept on together. Once upon a time, a long time ago. Above her head lay a copy of the unfolded document I'd read just a few hours ago. Her hands covered her face. Her body shook with sobs. I wanted to talk to her about what we should do next, but now was not the time. Did I feel vindicated that she was finally showing some emotion over the loss of our marriage? No. I actually felt sorry for her. For me, the blow wasn't as deep as it had been before. I had long ago accepted that it was over. Ever since she'd screamed Doug's name, I'd struggled all the time with the need to let her go. She was protected. Doug kept her occupied enough that she didn't give it a second thought. In her eyes, the end of the marriage was tomorrow's problem. Today, she could enjoy what she missed out on while she wasted her years with me. However, all dreams come to an end. Reality always catches up with you. In front of her lay a tangible object for the choice she had made. It was black and white, and with her signature on it. She could no longer deny it. I closed the door slightly and let her experience a moment of grief. She needed it. Things got a little more complicated from there. We still had to tell the girls. I wasn't looking forward to it, imagining what she would have to go through. I needed something to distract me, at least for a while. Something beautiful, and I knew exactly what it was. Or rather, who it was. Ever since that day at the club with Terry, I couldn't stop thinking about her. A starlet. I don't know why. According to Terry, she was a prostitute, not the most honorable woman, and yet I felt something with her. A connection. The way she looked at me. The way she talked to me. Flirted with me. I can't explain it. But I wanted to feel it again. So I got in the car and drove off. About 20 minutes later, I was pulling into the parking lot of Sal's Gentleman's Lounge. When I went inside, I was greeted by cigarette smoke, the smell of beer, and dozens of women. But I was only looking for one. "Welcome to Sal's. What can I do for you, sweetheart?" said a beautiful girl, greeting me. Said a beautiful girl, greeting me. Even with makeup, she looked barely old enough to drink. As pretty as she wasn't what I needed. Yes, I was actually looking for someone. "Is Starlet here?" The girl's smile never left her face, but it disappeared from her eyes. "Yes, she's here. Who do I tell to tell her she's waiting for her?" I was confused. There was no way she could remember me. She must have given dozens of lap dances a day. But I said my name anyway. My name is Frank. She's not expecting me or anything. I just wanted to see if she was available." "Okay, babe. Take a seat at that table over there. I'll see if she's busy." The girl left to find Starlet, and I sat down at the designated table. A smartly dressed waitress came over to me to take my drink order and then left to fill it. Starlet and my drink arrived at the same time. "Hi, Frank. I'm Starlet. Jesse said you were asking about me," she said, walking up to me. Although I expected it, I was a little disappointed when I didn't see any recognition in her eyes. It had been about 4 months since I had come here. In that time, she must have seen hundreds of faces. Still, there's a desire in all of us to be special, to stand out from the rest. There are thousands of romantic books and movies that talk about that one moment when two people develop an inexplicable connection amidst all the distractions around them. That fantasy lives in each of us. The famous singer who points to a beautiful groupie and pulls her to the stage. The high school nerd who finally gets the attention of a popular cheerleader. Or the rich prince who hides his royal status and falls in love with a worthless girl. These are all common themes in our imaginary scenarios. No matter how unrealistic they may be, we always want to believe in the promise that we stand out from the rest. "Hey, Starlet. I know you don't remember me. I came here a few months ago with my friend. I was feeling really bad that day and you gave me a few dances. It made me feel better." She smiled broadly and sat down in the seat across from me. "I'm glad to hear that. Would you like to dance some more? I'm just about free." Those eyes looked through me, just like they had the other night, locked onto me. At that moment, I was ready to commit murder for her. Luckily, the only thing she needed from me was a lap she could move on. I wish I could. With those words, she stood up and held out her hand, showing that she wanted me to take it. When I did, she intertwined our fingers and led me through the club. "Do you want to stay here in the open area, or are we going somewhere more private?" she asked. Again, those eyes looked at me as if seeing right through me. I looked away. It was like looking at the sun. "Alone?" My voice shook. She nodded and led me to a corner. "I was hoping to go to the champagne room," I said, having trouble speaking again. She stopped. "Say, the champagne room isn't cheap. Are you sure that's what you want?" I swallowed and nodded, wondering if she was talking about the room itself or what I was imagining. It didn't really matter. I was willing to pay for both. "Okay, sweetheart, come with me," she said, leading me towards the stairs. Before she went up, she stopped and turned suddenly, throwing me a token look. Now I remember you. You're Terry's friend. Came here because you were having trouble with your wife. Cherry Boy. I laughed. Yeah, that's me, Cherry Boy. Well, I'm glad you came back to me, Frank. You never forget your first time, do you? Now let's go upstairs. I don't need to tell you where I want your eyes to be, do I? Trust me, I won't hurt you. You better not, she giggled. As we climbed the stairs, she led me to a secluded corner. I was starting to get nervous. I didn't know what to expect. Was I going to get laid? How could I even ask? So, Frank, if you want to have fun with me, you're going to have to do a couple things first. What things? Yeah. First, you're going to have to get a room, and not a cheap one. If you want a back alley hooker, you're going to have to leave. When I get home from work at 2, you can pick me up outside the club and take me to your room. What else? Pay me $300. Next chapter. That's exactly how it happened. I got a room on the beach. It had a balcony that overlooked the ocean. It was peak time, closer to summer, so it cost $350 a night. I didn't know what she meant by not a cheap room, so I chose one that I knew was appropriate. It wasn't expensive enough to flaunt her money, but it definitely wasn't some hole-in-the-wall no-tell motel. She left the club at about 2:30. She looked around and spotted me by my car. When she approached me, I was amazed at how much she had changed. She looked more real. Hey, Frank, I almost didn't expect you to show up, she said as she walked up to me. A smile spread across her face. But there was something missing in it. And I walked her over to the passenger side of my car and opened the door in front of her. She very smoothly entered the car and got in. As I moved to the driver's side and sat down, she touched my arm lightly. Do you have something for me? She asked. I realized what she meant. I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope that contained money. As soon as I held it out to her, it disappeared into her purse. It's always best to get it over with beforehand. It can ruin the mood later on, but you don't worry. Soon you won't be thinking about it. She purred, stroking my hand, making the hairs on it stand up. You have a nice car. What do you do? She asked as we pulled out of the club's parking lot. I'm an engineer. I design engines. In fact, I designed the engine for this model. She looked impressed. Wow. No shit. It accelerates from 0 to 60 in less time than it takes to crack an egg. I'm actually part of a team trying to create a new type of engine, I said proudly. She nodded and smiled. You're obviously very good at your job. It's very energizing. I know she meant it as a compliment, but my eyes sparkled when she said it. I was good at my job, better than anyone even, but the price I paid for it wasn't worth it. Did I say something wrong? She asked. I shrugged. No, it's just that I'm haunted. You know? I know the feeling, she said quietly. I got the feeling she was talking more to herself than to me. For a few moments, we sat in silence. Are you hungry? I asked, trying to break the tension that had set in. She nodded. A little bit, but I'm sure you want to get to your room and get what you paid for. I can wait. I didn't like that. I didn't like the idea of having fun with her and staying hungry at the same time. Do you like pancakes? Huh. Do you like pancakes? Only IHOP and McDonald's are open at this time, and I can't eat artificial food. She smiled slightly at me to show me that my gesture was appreciated. I'm fine, Frank. Thanks for asking. But I'd rather just do what we came here to do. That sounded so cold. Clinical. Do what we came here to do? Like it was nothing more than a business transaction. I mean, it probably was. But she could have left me with the fantasy that it was more than that. Okay, I said, a little too dejected. She caught that, but didn't say anything more on the subject. The rest of the ride went pretty quietly. It wasn't until we got to the room that the first words were spoken. So, Frankie, what would you like to do to me? The change was so sudden and yet so smooth at the same time. However, as much as my body wanted her, my mind was not in agreement. For me, I needed both. I know a lot of guys would snatch my man card and tear it up over this, but with the realization of what I was thinking about her right now, I couldn't do that. Starlet, I said with more assertiveness, pushing her away slightly. She looked embarrassed as I walked to the other end of the room, rubbing her head in frustration. Okay, Frank, what do you want? I thought I understood you, but apparently not. Tell me what you're looking for. I noticed a note of irritation in her voice, but she recovered quickly. Tell your mom what she can do for you, Frankie. She was good. She had that seductress personality. She could turn it on and off at will, but I could see right through her. I want something to eat. I'm hungry. Are you? Are you hungry? I said, reaching for the phone to call room service. Her face became irritated, but after a moment it disappeared again, and the kittenishness returned. She came toward me and tried to wrap her arms around me again. I ducked away from her. She stood there, confused. Then irritation rose to the surface. Why the hell did you bring me here, Frank? Huh? I had a long night of dancing and I could have been home and asleep, but I came to her with you. There she is, the real starlet, or whatever her name was. I want to talk, I said, honestly. She looked at me skeptically for a moment. Then she shook her head and laughed. When she finished laughing, she looked at me again with annoyance. Take me back to the club, she said curtly. What? I said take me back to the damn club. That's where my car's parked. Tonight is over. I'm not the girl you want and I'm not going to waste our time. Are you kidding me? How do you know what I want? She laughed again. Come on, you think you're different from the hundreds of other guys I see? Did you think that because you opened my door and asked me if I was hungry, I'd suddenly be overwhelmed with love? This isn't some goddamn fairy tale. That's not what I was trying to do. Frank, stop kidding yourself. What you want is a girlfriend experience. You want to have lunch with me, talk and laugh with me, and then have fun with me like we're in a real relationship, like I'm your girlfriend. And then you'll come home to your wife and be the husband she needs. Tears came to my eyes at the mention of my wife. I tried to stop them, but they wouldn't stop. They kept walking. Frank? I tried to speak, but I couldn't. The tears kept pouring. Starlet looked at me perplexed for a moment, and then her face turned sad. Your wife, she left you, didn't she? At this, I snapped. I just got the papers today, I managed to say. And then I fell to my knees. I thought I wasn't going to cry about this anymore. I thought it was all behind me. But it wasn't. I was now in a room with a woman, and all I could do was cry over the bitch. We lay like that for about 10 minutes. When the flow of tears subsided, I looked into her eyes. They were full of sympathy. I'm really sorry, I must have ruined the mood, I said with a self-deprecating laugh. Quite, she replied, but there was a hint of playfulness in her voice. Then, her face turned serious. Look, Frank, I'm sorry about your marriage. I'm really sorry. But what you want from me tonight, I can't give you. I can beat the crap out of you and leave you limping home, but I can't pretend to be your girlfriend. I'm not cut out for that. I'm sorry. I nodded, standing up. I understand, Starlet. I really do. She nodded and kissed my cheek. Then she picked up her purse, rummaged through it, and pulled out an envelope of money. Here's your money, Frank, she said, trying to hold it out to me. I pushed it away from her. Keep it, Starlet. But after all, we had nothing. I looked at her and realized I felt some kind of release for the first time in a long time. It wasn't the manliest confession, but maybe I just needed a good cry, to let the bile out. The woman hugging me may have been exactly what I needed. You helped me today, Starlet. Whether you realize it or not, you helped. We didn't have anything, but I consider that money well spent. So keep it. You've earned them. She nodded and put the money back in her purse. We left the room and headed to my car so I could drive her back to the club. For a while, we sat in silence. It wasn't awkward, like two people desperately thinking of what to say. It was more comfortable. Neither of us needed to speak. We really didn't have anything to say, but that was okay. You know what, Frank? I'm getting hungry. What do you say we go to IHOP after all? She broke the silence. I glanced over at her and saw that she was looking at me again. Sure, I could use some unlimited pancakes, I joked. She smiled and nodded. Me too. As we walked around, I turned to her. Hey, Starlet, if you don't want to answer that question, I understand. But I have to ask, what's your real name? She sighed and thought for a moment. Then she looked at me with her piercing eyes. Cassandra. You can call me Sandra. I smiled at her and nodded. Nice to meet you, Sandra. Her look turned into a smirk. Ah, yes, it's nice to meet you. Because I just told you my real name, and it's like you're meeting me for the first time. Clever, she said sarcastically. That's what I thought. That's because you're corny, she tossed back at me. She laughed, turning away and shaking her head. However, when I looked at the reflection of her face in the passenger side window, I saw that she was smiling. Sandra. It was really nice to meet her. Part 3. I watched in amazement as Sandra devoured every bite of food on her plate. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, everything. Gone. She must have sensed me watching her because she looked up from her food with an annoyed expression on her face. What? She asked with a mouthful of food. Nothing. Nothing. You're just eating like a homeless person. I was about to give you $1 and ask you to wash my windshield. Her face contorted into a smirk, or at least it would have been a smirk if her mouth hadn't been so full. She swallowed her food and said, There, now we're laughing. An hour ago you were sobbing like a little girl getting her period. Something flashed across my face because her face lowered. Frank, I'm sorry. I was just kidding. I didn't mean to. I waved away her apology. No, it's okay. You didn't say anything bad. I just have a lot of problems right now. She nodded and took a sip of her orange juice. An awkward silence hung between us. You want to talk about it? I may be a prostitute and a stripper, but I'm also a good listener. She said this with a smug chuckle. In that moment, I saw her as an insecure girl, but that quickly passed. Something about her alerted me. I understood her. I felt it that first night we met. Even though our entire relationship was fake, I couldn't help but feel a kinship with her. It's a long and boring story. Trust me. You don't want to hear it. She looked at me and smiled warmly. Well, you paid me $300 and treated me to breakfast. So consider that you got what you deserved. Wait a minute. You're not paying for that? I asked with feigned shock, pointing to the food. Her eyes caught the humor in mine and we both laughed. Then she looked at me expectantly, as if she was waiting for me to tell me everything. And I did. I told the whole story, from that first night when Claire admitted she was unhappy to the first night I met Sandra. She never once interrupted me. When I finished, it was quiet for a moment. If I may say so, your ex-wife is a real bitch. She broke the silence. I felt obligated to defend Claire, but I didn't. Honestly, it felt good to have someone on my side. She continued. I can understand her frustration with you. But to go and sleep with her supposedly best friend? That's low. She says I left her no choice. There was no reason to fight for the marriage. Well, in my opinion, no one ever gives you a reason to fight for anything. You do it because losing it would hurt more than the fight you'd have to endure to keep it. I've seen mothers endure humiliation and pain to fight for children who don't give them a reason to. Wives even defend low husbands who beat them and humiliate them because they feel that being without that person is worse than the crap they have to deal with to be with them. That's the difference between love and everything else. Love is its own reason to keep fighting. I couldn't help but marvel along with her. She noticed this and burst into self-deprecating laughter again. What, a stripper can't be deep? I had to laugh at that. I guess you know more about life than the average person. At that, her eyes narrowed and she looked at me angrily. Her sudden change of mood caught me off guard. More about life than normal people? What does that mean? So, I guess I was obviously molested as a child or abandoned by my father. Why else would I be some kind of abnormal stripper? She pounced on me. It seemed I had insulted her, and I didn't mean it at all. No, that's not what I meant. I just thought that all sorts of stories happen to the people you run into. I can't be the first guy to come to you to recover from heartache. You knew exactly what I needed in the room, which means you've already encountered another guy like me. That's all I meant. Whatever. She lowered her gaze to the menu for a moment, pausing the progression of the conversation. Have you ever fallen in love? I asked. She tensed, as if the question surprised her. She couldn't hide the grim expression on her face that reflected her feelings when I asked the question. After seeing her reaction, a yes or no answer didn't matter. Only a person who had loved, been burned, and lost could feel the emotions that would make such a beautiful face look so sad. So far, we had only talked about me. I wanted to ask her about the past. She was right about one thing. I wondered how a woman like her became a stripper who also slept with men for money. She was nothing like herself. If we check our stereotypes, I'm sure we all come up with the nymphomaniac or the femme fatale gold digger who would probably kill you to get your wallet if the opportunity presented itself. Sandra played these roles to perfection, but they were exactly the roles as an actress plays in a movie or play. I could see that it was all an act of self-preservation. There was so much more underneath that exterior. Her eyes glazed over, as if she were haunted by some memory. She brushed it off as she did everything else and changed the subject. Well, Frank, I'm going to turn into a pumpkin again soon. I need to get home and get to bed. I'm not getting any more sleep at 5 in the morning. Her redirection of my attention worked, but only because I didn't realize how late it was. Oh shit. Is it 5 already? I asked, checking my watch. Indeed, it was. Where had the time gone? Yep. Time flies when you're with me. I have that effect on people. It's because I'm awesome. She smiled at me. Disappointing is what I mean. We've been talking about me all night and I don't know the slightest thing about you. It was that time again. A flash of the real Sandra. I saw it in her eyes, but only for a moment. She didn't want to let her guard down. The mask was back. Well, you could find out all about me if you wanted to, handsome. She playfully ran her hands over her body as if putting it on display. You know that's not what I meant. At that moment, her demeanor changed. Her gaze softened. Right in front of me, her face became more innocent. It's going to cost you a lot more than $300, she said. There was no humor in her voice, no sarcasm. This was the real Sandra speaking. How about $300 in breakfast? I joked lightly. This elicited a hearty laugh from her. Not a throaty, seductive laugh like starlets, or full of cynicism when I say something heartwarming. It was a genuine laugh. Frank, we need to go. I need to get some sleep. Some of us have to work for a living, she said, squeezing her eyes shut again. She slipped out of the stall and grabbed her purse, making it clear that there could be no negotiation and that the conversation was over. I'm working. A lot. It's the main reason my wife left me. Well, when you do your job in 6-inch heels and a thong, we'll compare notes. For some reason, the image of me in heels and a thong was hilarious. It must have been funny to her too because we laughed together. Touching. That was all I could say. The waitress must have sensed we were ready to leave because she showed up with the check. After thanking her, I put a $5 tip on the table and went to pay the bill. The drive back to the club wasn't long. A few minutes later, I parked next to her Jetta Passat. Well, Frank, it's been a long time since I've had a man stay with me all night. You have stamina? She joked, once again resorting to her usual trick. But I wasn't going to go for it. I wasn't going to let her cap off this night with playful banter. Sandra, you helped me tonight. I don't let a lot of people near me, but I'm glad I let you in. Thank you for being here. For the first time tonight, her guard was completely down. She looked sincerely into my eyes. Anytime, Frank. I hope things work out for you. You're a good guy. You deserve the best. With those words, she kissed me gently on the lips and got out of the car. It wasn't a passionate kiss, the kind of kiss that happens between two lovers. It was a soft kiss, the kind of kiss you would give to a friend. I watched her get into her car and drive away. Then I drove back to my room. I decided that I would get a room for an extra night. I could sleep on the big double bed for a change. When I went to bed, I slept like the dead. I was exhausted. But for the first time in a long time, I felt the pain lessen. It wasn't the mask of anger I'd been putting on lately to convince myself that it didn't scare me. I could actually feel it subsiding, as if I had released the pressure and gotten rid of the excess. I felt like I could finally start to get better. Next chapter. Frank, are you awake? Claire's voice sounded concerned as she knocked on my office door. It had been about a week since the evening with Sandra. When I got back to my apartment after nights spent in a hotel room, I felt like I had turned a corner. I had gained clarity. My future no longer seemed so bleak. I was also amused that Claire had inquired about where I'd been and why I'd come at this hour, as if I owed her something. Of course, I informed her that my night had been completely innocent and that she could be sure I hadn't been having fun with anyone. Yes, of course. I just waved her off and left her standing still. I didn't care what she thought. I started making preparations to leave my house. I rented a storage unit and started moving my belongings there. I also started looking for another place to live. At this time, I was choosing between an apartment that was close to my work and a townhouse that was 2 blocks away from Claire and my girls. I felt like I was finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And then evening happened. "What's up, Claire?" I asked in an indifferent voice. I really didn't want to see her. Nevertheless, she took my acknowledgement as an invitation and entered my office. I turned in my chair to meet her gaze. She looked as if she had been sobbing. Her face was blotchy, as if tears had just dried on it from her swollen eyes. "I was just checking up on you, to see how you are, to see how I am." Isn't that sweet? Truth be told, I was angry. At her. You see, tonight was the night we decided to break the news about Mom and Dad to the girls. How do you explain to 5- and 8-year-olds that their parents are splitting up? How do you reiterate that they will see Daddy even if he is in a different house? How do you tell them that they will still be a family and that nothing will change? Very painfully and with lots of tears. Here's how. Damn Claire and her unhappiness. So you can imagine how excited I was to hear her voice when she knocked on my door. "I'm doing just fine, thanks for asking." "Frank?" "Claire, what? What do you want from me?" I raged and threw the pen I was holding in my hand onto the table behind me. I threw it with unnecessary force because it skipped across the table and fell on the edge. "You wanted freedom, I gave it to you. You wanted half of everything, except what she didn't know about. I gave you that. Child support, my kids. I gave you everything you wanted. What more can I give you? Please tell me what else I can help you with." I just wanted to talk. I laughed sardonically. "Talk? Oh, now you want to talk? Well, better late than never. Unfortunately, I've already said everything. You see, I had to break my daughter's hearts today. I had to tell them that Mom and Dad can't get their act together, and now their whole family is ruined. So I don't have an ounce of sympathy left for you. If you want to feel better, find a guy who doesn't care that your decision to break up your family is hurting Kelly and Stacy. I'm not that guy. You need to find your boyfriend. He doesn't care." She looked at me incredulously. "Do you have to be like that now? Anytime you can be an asshole, you can't take a break to be a human being for once? I've been there too. I sat next to you as we told our daughters about our divorce. I know you're hurting, Frank. I know it, because I'm hurting too. Who cares if you're hurting? I don't care what you're going through right now. You made this shitty bed and we're all lying on it. So go find Doug. He was so helpful when you split up with your husband. I'm sure he can do the same to help you get over the pain you put your daughters through." "We both put them through hell, Frank. We both had a part in it." "Yes, I was working too hard. You were entertaining my best friend. Everyone is not equal here. You want to kid yourself? Fine." "You asshole," she said, getting up and walking out of my office. "You goddamn asshole." "At least I'm not a cheater," I shouted as she slammed the door shut. I didn't get a response, but I'm sure she heard me. Was I acting childish? Of course, I could admit that. Was I enjoying myself? No, not really. My teenage behavior was just a way to vent my real frustration. The pain of looking your children in the eye and ruining their world is an agony that can only be compared to similar pain. Being shot, stabbed, or burned can't even be compared to that. That night with Sandra, I took 2 steps forward to overcome the bitterness I felt toward Claire. Tonight, I took a huge step back, and I had a head start. The betrayal was no longer about me. Now it had spread. The curse of hiding the state of our marriage from our daughters until now was that we were hiding it from ourselves as well. At any point up to this point, we could have dropped everything and turned back. Of course, we would have been broken. We might never be the loving couple we used to be, but we could have pretended to be out of sorts long enough for the girls to grow up. Now there was no reason to turn around and go back. The damage had been done completely. Next chapter. The next day at work, I was called in to meet with my superiors again. I groaned loudly when Sarah broke the news to me. We'd already had a meeting not too long ago. What could they possibly need so soon? You need to calm down, Mr. Underwood. You know what they're like. A bunch of pencil pushers. Don't let them see your frustration, Sarah said to me, trying to reassure me. What more could they possibly want? I just gave them a progress report. Nothing else has been done since then. God, why can't I just do the damn job and be left alone? She thought for a moment, then leaned toward him. I don't think it's the engine. She seemed to be storing up a juicy bit of information and contemplating whether to lay it all out in the open. Okay, I was intrigued. This company was run by assistants. They talked to each other. Sarah often found out about things long before I did. What could it be about? I asked. She realized she had me hooked and smiled slyly. An old friend of yours, Mr. Stamper? Doug? She nodded understandingly. Judging by the smirk on her face and her demeanor, I wondered how much she actually knew about my situation. Before this, she hadn't made it clear in any way that she knew anything. She knew I was getting a divorce because she pointed me to Terry. But I never shared the details with her. But now she was talking to me like we were partners in the fight with Doug. She knew? How? And how did she know even half of what she knew? Why would they go out with me because of him? She lowered her voice. I heard he stole some secrets when he left. I think they want to sue him or something. I'm not sure. I can't say it hurt me to hear that Doug was out of luck. Hell, to be honest, it even brightened my day a little. Still, I couldn't imagine Doug doing that. It wasn't about his loyalty or ethics. He had none of those things. I just didn't think he was that stupid. Why would they ask me that? She shrugged and seemed about to say something else, but then stopped. She looked past me as if someone had come up behind her. Excuse me, I'm looking for Frank Underwood. I heard from behind me. The voice was male, and it sounded young. I turned around and saw a guy who looked like an IT guy. I'm Frank. How can I help you? Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah carelessly move a strand of hair out of my face. She was looking at this guy like a teenage girl looks at the best quarterback in school. Hi, my name is Jason Morrison. I'm from company. We're contracted to upgrade our security system. I was told to meet with you. Really? Since when do we have to upgrade our security system? Well, we're the company that installed your security system 5 years ago. We've been maintaining it ever since. According to this, he pulled out a piece of paper and read on it. You also contracted us to perform several upgrades to your system. I'm the guy who's supposed to do the initial evaluation. I vaguely remembered installing the new security system. I had been the contact person for its installation, which was probably why he was looking for me now. I remembered talking to some other person, an older and fat man. Just a minute. I remember your company. It was led by an ex-military man who looked like he never missed a meal. The young guy chuckled. You mean Bernie? Yeah, he never missed a meal. Never. In fact, he eats a few of other people's portions when they're turned away. I looked over at Sarah, who was giggling at the joke like it was the funniest thing she'd heard since Kevin Hart had appeared on The Ellen Show. By this time, she had pretty much scribbled Mrs. Sarah Morrison in her notebook with hearts around it. I almost expected her to start huffing and puffing and whistling, and her heart-shaped eyes to pop out of her head like a cartoon wolf. Well, Jason, I'm glad to have you. I'm going to be terribly busy and won't be able to take you out. He looked puzzled. That's going to be a problem. Actually, I'll need a contact. I'll need passwords, security logs, and more. Once I get started, it'll be fine. My team will come in here and do upgrades and we'll be pretty much invisible. But for the first couple days, I'll need someone who can point me in the right direction. The first couple days, how long should the upgrade take? About a week. I saw one of the heads trying to get my attention. He had a serious look on his face. Whatever they needed me for, it wasn't good. Look, Mr. Morrison, I'm sure my assistant Sarah can get you whatever you need. I have an urgent meeting and also a mountain of work to do. If she needs anything, she can call me. Is that okay with you, Sarah? Sure, I'll stick around to help him. From the looks of it, she wasn't the least bit uncomfortable. Okay, I'll see you later. With those words, I headed for the exit. I almost laughed to myself. It reminded me of the first time I met Claire. Love. At first, it's just infatuation. The awe in the eyes, the rapid heartbeat. It's so beautiful in the beginning, until it all turns to shit. Next chapter. Hey, baby. I was ushered into the conference room and seated in front of my superiors. This meeting was clearly not for a progress report. Along with the usual players, I saw Terry and a couple other lawyers. Sitting in front of all the top people in the company is scary enough as it is. And when they bring in a lawyer, the anxiety increases even more. Good morning, Mr. Underwood. As you know, my name is Terrence Ross. We're here because we have a couple of questions about an old employee of yours, Mr. Douglas Stamper. You worked together for many years before he left. You even became good friends. Do you remember him? Terry knew perfectly well that I remembered him. I told him my whole story. But I knew he was just doing his job. It wasn't just me that needed to be told. It was everyone in the room, including the stenographer who was typing furiously. Yes, I remember him. We worked together, and he was a friend of mine. But I haven't spoken to him in months. May I ask what this is about? I half expected Terry to broach the subject of Doug's involvement in my divorce, but he didn't. He treated what it was in my case as if they were two separate entities. Do you recognize this? He asked, holding out a piece of paper to me. I took it and looked at it for a brief second. It's a schematic, said I, as if everyone should have already guessed what it was. No one seemed shocked by my revelation. Thank you for that, Mr. Underwood, but I need you to take another look at it. What is this diagram? I took a closer look, and my heart nearly dropped. Panic set in. I recognized that diagram. It's the one Doug and I stole from that intern when we were fighting for a job here. A schematic of the new propulsion system. It was Donald's schematic. Damn it! What's this doing here? I must have seen this somewhere before, but I couldn't find it. Why are you asking me that? I asked nervously. This was not good at all. Past sins coming back to haunt me. We believe Mr. Stamper designed this system when he worked here and used our equipment to do it. He patented the design, but that doesn't change the fact that he came up with it using our resources. His company just released a plan to launch this new system this year, and Doug was the one who designed it. If that's true, then we can claim this system as our own. Wait a minute. Are you saying Doug designed it? Yes, and he patented it not too long ago. Does that surprise you? For a moment, I froze in amazement. This wasn't about my sins. This was all about Doug. They wanted to know if Doug had come up with this design while he was working here. But Doug didn't come up with the design at all. Donald did. We stole his design so we wouldn't give him a chance to beat us, but we never planned to use it. At least I didn't. The motive for stealing it wasn't to use it for ourselves, but to prevent him from being able to wow the company with it and take his place. I assumed that after Doug and I were hired, he would take his design to another company. But Doug was supposed to email it to him after it was done. He did email it to him, didn't he? I puzzled over it, but I didn't actually see Doug do it. I just assumed he did it because it was part of the plan. We just wanted to make it harder for him to access his work at the moment, not steal it altogether. But apparently Doug had other ideas. He passed off the work as his own. Now the company wanted to know if I was aware that Doug had developed it here. This presented me with a huge moral dilemma. Do I screw over the man who screwed me over? Tough choice. I was about to open my mouth, but then I stopped myself. An even more difficult choice. Fool him or fool him big time? I can say Doug came up with these designs while he was working here, or I can say he stole them from Donald. In the former case, he'd get sued, and in the latter case, he'd probably get disbarred as an engineer altogether, and then he'd be sued. Did I want that on my conscience? Doug, forced to give up his career and be punished for a crime we both committed? I thought back to that morning when I'd eaten Claire. She was wriggling on the bed in front of me, her juices coating my lips. Then she had screamed his name. I also remembered that day in Doug's office, when he had smugly justified his betrayal by blaming it on me. I didn't deserve Claire, he had sanctimoniously declared as he professed his love for her. Apparently, I didn't deserve a best friend either. My conscience would be fine. I recognize the scheme, Mr. Ross. But Doug didn't come up with that blueprint when he worked here. Another intern did. Doug stole it from him. I swear the whole room gave a friendly gasp. No one, including Terry, had expected this information. So you're saying that Mr. Stamper stole this design from another employee who worked here, switched jobs, and passed it off as his own? One of the supervisors asked. Terry looked at me with some suspicion but said nothing. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. The stenographer was typing at breakneck speed. The clicks of her fingers hammering out each word were constant. Who's the intern? Another of the heads asked. His name was Donald. I don't remember his last name. Come to think of it, I never knew his last name. Did you witness Mr. Stamper steal that scheme? Cut in Terry. At that, he gave me a wary look. It was obvious he was trying to send me an unspoken message, warning me to be careful. Yes, I saw him do it. I saw Terry involuntarily wrinkle his nose. The others in the room mumbled for a few seconds, then fell silent. To make sure we understand you correctly, let me repeat. You claim to be an eyewitness to the crime whereby Mr. Stamper stole this scheme from an intern named Donald. Terry chose his words very carefully, emphasizing the ones he wanted to draw my close attention to. Witness and crime were what changed in his tone and pitch when he said them. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Even despite his professional appearance, Terry slumped slightly at this admission. I could tell he didn't approve of my actions, but he had a job to do, and now I was left to my own devices. Tell us about how you witnessed Mr. Stamper stealing that design, said Terry, once again becoming the lawyer he was. His practiced interrogative voice was steady and even. I've decided to tell the truth. The only part of the story I changed was that instead of both of us stealing the design, I asked Doug to do it. The whole time I was talking, Terry was taking notes. So, to reiterate, said Terry, reading from his notebook, you, Mr. Stamper, and intern Donald decided to go out drinking. The three of you got intoxicated and drove to intern Donald's residence. Mr. Stamper then steals this scheme that we showed you, emails it to himself, and tries to destroy intern Donald's personal laptop so that no evidence of its creation remains. Is that correct, Mr. Underwood? Yes, that's correct. Did you know in advance that Mr. Stamper planned to steal this design? It was a difficult question. Everything else had been true so far, only one detail had been changed. It came out so easily because all I had to do was retell the events of that night. Doug did steal the design, so it was easy to just tell the truth. However, this question posed a problem. If I answered yes, I would become an accomplice. If I said no, however, it could come back to haunt me. Doug would undoubtedly be interrogated, and then all he'd have to do is throw me under the bus with him. If I was caught in an outright lie, it could discredit me. I decided to tell the truth. Something like, yes, I knew he was planning to steal it. We were competing for the 2 remaining vacancies. There were 3 of us. When we found out that Donald was going to submit this design as his ticket to one of those seats, we knew it would secure him a spot. Doug felt that of the 2 of us, he was the weakest candidate. So when we decided to go out for drinks, he told me he planned to make sure Donald didn't have a scheme to show you. I warned him not to do that, told him we would find another way to beat Donald. But he knew that once you guys saw that scheme, he was finished. When we got Donald to his apartment, Doug started going through his laptop. I don't even know how he managed to punch in the access code. I also didn't know that he planned to destroy the laptop, or that he was going to pass off the scheme as his own. Nods from everyone present showed that they believed me. Even Terry looked convinced. It was easy enough to pass it off because it was 95% true. Separating Donald from his designs is not a crime. If I had known that, I would have gotten a slap on the wrist. Destroying the laptop is a little more serious. I should have distanced myself from it. Doug stealing the design and passing it off as his own was all his stupid mistake. Well, Mr. Underwood, thank you for your honesty. We'll contact this Donald guy to confirm your story and make a decision. I realize it must not be easy to testify against someone you call a friend. Even Terry almost smiled at those words, but we are grateful to you. He smirked briefly as if to say, you lucky son of a bitch. I answered him with an innocent look that said, who? Me? If we can use this to challenge the patent and get it invalidated, we can get this design for ourselves. We need to find this Donald immediately. If he has anything to challenge it, we can use it, said one of the heads. I could practically hear the wheels turning. Well, he emailed the design to himself. Maybe he used his company's email address. I'm not sure, but if he did, that's a start, isn't it? I offered, trying to offer as much help as I could. They nodded and muttered something else. Hey, I just wanted to get justice for my company. That's all. My willingness to help had nothing to do with framing that sneaky, conniving son of a bitch. Scout's honor. Who cares if I wasn't a Boy Scout? Tell me, Frank, can the current problems with our engine be solved with this? The other asked me. I looked at him and saw the possibilities. Maybe. I'm not sure. But if we got Donald on our team, I'm sure he'd be a big help to us. Whoever could come up with something like this could probably bring something else to the table. I saw smiles all around me. When it comes to making money, they would only smile. Hell, they were practically jerking off under the table. Stopping the development of one of our competitors undoubtedly meant big money for them. Taking a design that would take them to the next level and making it our own. Ka-ching. And I was the guy who put the mouse in the Python tank. Next chapter. It was a week before I heard anything more about it. By this time, I had decided to bid on a townhouse that was not far from my girls. I was afraid that if I moved to an apartment that was closer to my work, my tendency to overwork would cause me to stop paying attention to what was really important. Out of sight, out of mind. But if I lived closer to my girls, my feet would stay on the ground. Every morning on my way to and from work, I would have to walk past my old house. It would be my daily reminder to make time for the two most precious things I have. Sometimes real strength lies in honestly recognizing your weaknesses and confronting them. When the phone call rang, I was just walking with the girls at an amusement park. Imagine my surprise when Doug's name popped up on the screen. My girls were devouring sugar by the gram, eating crazy bread and drinking a large serving of soda. So I managed to slip out from behind the table. I knew that this conversation was more than likely not going to be kid-friendly. I walked over to a seat that was close enough that I could watch them, but out of hearing range so I could talk freely to this backstabbing asshole without censoring myself. "What do you want, Doug?" I asked curtly, answering the phone. "You bastard. I know you're the one who snitched on that scheme." Well. Apparently the council had contacted him. There was nothing I could do. I had to rub his face in it. "Doug, you look angry. What's the problem?" "You traitorous asshole. Do you know that? No wonder your wife left you." Under normal circumstances, this would have pissed me off. But now, knowing what lay ahead for Doug, I felt calm. I could see that this was a desperate attempt to brush me off as a fallen man. Tsk, tsk, tsk. "Hey, Pot," I said in an even tone. "Huh? What the hell are you talking about?" "Come on, Doug. Do I really have to explain how the pot calling the kettle black? Do you really want to compare notes on betrayal? Besides, you were the one who was stupid enough to try to pass off someone else's work as your own." I just told them what I knew. "We both did it, asshole. You know it. You made it sound like I did it myself." I didn't want to admit anything that could be used against me. With current technology, he could have easily kept a record. Still, I wanted to torture him. Doug, I laughed. "Please don't drag me into your quicksand of stupidity. I wasn't trying to use stolen schemes to boost my career. I'm smart enough to do that with my own work. While you were busy seducing my wife, I was working. You've both made that clear. If you'd spent less time getting into Claire's pants and more time on your own work, maybe you wouldn't have to stoop so low. That design was the only reason I was hired for this job. You already had a promotion. I was just trying to get mine." His voice sounded worried. I would have felt sorry for him if I hadn't enjoyed his misery. "Well, you got it. Congratulations. Look on the bright side, Doug. Now you'll have a lot more time to tell Claire how wonderful she is. You won't have to worry about becoming a workaholic like me. Isn't that great?" He started to say something, but then stopped himself. I guess he decided to change tactics because when he spoke again, his voice was softer. He was practically begging. "Frank, please. This is my livelihood. I know you don't like me, but we used to be friends. You don't realize this could haunt me for the rest of my life. I can't get another job with a record like that. We can settle what I did to you another way. You're not that guy. You're not like me. Don't let my actions change who you are. You're better than me. Oh God, had he really stooped to humiliation? He must be desperate. Am I better than him? It was too good to be true. What I did next was cruel. I admit that. But in my defense, it felt awesome. Okay, you're right. I'm gonna go talk to the board of directors in the morning. I'll tell them I made a mistake. We can work things out differently. The only thing I ask is that you stop seeing Claire. For a moment, he was stunned. He was silent for so long I almost thought we'd been disconnected. What? I'll tell the council I made a mistake. I'll lie for you, but only if you stop seeing Claire. I felt his heart drop on the other end of the phone. But you're divorced! And the reason for that is you. You once told me I didn't deserve Claire because I chose her over a job. Now you have to make the same choice. You have to prove that you're a better man for her than I am. If you turn her down, I'll keep your job. Or you can keep seeing her. The choice is yours. Was I really going to speak in front of the board of directors? No way. Even if I wanted to, it was out of my hands right now. The heads had a juicy steak in their mouths, and there was no way they'd let it go. But I was curious. He had confessed his love for her. I wanted to know how deep that love really was. Do you really want us to break up? Do you? That's low, Frank. You're not that low. I was tired of him trying to appeal to my benevolent nature to manipulate me into making things better for him. The first time, it was amusing. Now it was annoying. I wanted to burst his bubble. Doug, you entertained my wife. You took my family away from me, so please stop saying how much better I am than you. I already know that. I don't steal what doesn't belong to me and try to make it my own. I do my own work. I have my own wife, and you? You're a pathetic nothing who can't do anything on his own. When we were interns, we both knew you were the one at risk of unemployment. Don't pretend that's not true. So now I'm giving you a chance to make a choice. To do the manly thing and sacrifice what you truly believe in. So dump Claire and keep your job. Or don't. The choice is yours. Frank. Tick-tock, Doug. Tick-tock. Everything went quiet again. I could practically hear him pondering on the other end. Seconds passed, and I was already thinking he was going to pick Claire. Finally, he said softly, "Okay, you win." What was that? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you over the hypocrisy. You'll have to speak louder. You won, asshole, okay? I'll defer to Claire. Are you satisfied? A sinister smile spread across my face. See? That wasn't so hard. Apparently you don't deserve Claire either. You're a damn asshole, Frank. I know I am. So do you. I want you to think about that when you're out of a job. What? Please. You didn't think I was going to help you, did you? God, you really are stupid. Have a nice life, Doug, and don't call me again. You, Mama? I ended the conversation with the biggest smile on my face. I then walked over to my daughters. So who wants to go for another ride? Maybe. Their happy squeals greeted me as they rushed towards me. Each of them grabbed my hand and dragged me away from the food area to the rides. Today was such a beautiful day. Next chapter. The weeks went by, followed by my kids, my job, and the battle to close on the townhouse. I was bargaining with a young couple who were expecting twins. They were just starting out in life. They even had a dog. How nice. They opted for the townhouse. It was exactly like the one the wife grew up in. I could sympathize with that nostalgia. But I was fighting for my girls. I didn't want to turn into the reclusive father I once was. For me, this house was the first step. I chose this house to be closer to my girls over an apartment that was closer to my work. That alone made the house invaluable to me. They were determined. But so was I. So I raised the price another couple $1,000s. I was willing to do more than that. Even if I paid more than the house was worth, I would get my money's worth. One evening, I sat in my office and ate the dinner Claire had made. It was delicious. What I will definitely miss is her cooking. When we first got married, she didn't even know how to boil eggs. I'm exaggerating, but her cooking skills left a lot to be desired. Over time, she gathered recipes from the internet, random cookbooks, and from other women at home. She was determined to be a good wife and a good mother. She was now a master in the kitchen. I thought it was odd that she still cooked for me even though we were divorced. I guess it wasn't too strange considering I was still living in the same house. Still, it was to be expected that she would stop doing all her wifely duties for a husband she no longer loved. "Frank, can we talk?" I heard her say, a moment after the creak of my office door let me know someone was opening it. "Sure," I said, setting my plate on the table and turning around in my seat. Claire walked into my office and sat down on the couch bed. It seemed like she was trying to say something, but nothing came out. Then she began to stutter. I, I just, God, this is so hard. I had a whole speech planned." I was confused for a moment. "Just say what you want to say." Tears streamed down her face. "I just wanted to tell you how sorry I am. For everything. I ruined everything." She sat there crying for a while. I pulled some tissues out of a box on my desk and handed them to her. She wiped her nose with them. "I know I was wrong to do what I did to Doug. I knew it then. It's just that I was so miserable that I stopped thinking about how it would affect my family. I just wanted to do something that would make me feel better. The first time was a mistake. We got too drunk and then—" I nodded. I didn't want to hear the continuation of that statement. "But after that, I thought it might just be a brief fling. Something to get me through. I trusted him because I knew him so well. He was kind to me. He was easy to talk to. I thought you didn't need me, so it was no big deal. Then he told me he loved me. After that, everything went downhill from there." "Because you fell in love with him too?" She nodded and cried some more. I let her digest that. Not so much what she said, but how it affected me. Or better yet, how it did not affect me. The burning pain that would have come up months ago at that statement just wasn't there. When I realized I loved him, the unhappiness I felt for you intensified. But the truth is, I still loved you. I didn't plan on leaving you. The night I told you I was unhappy, I planned to tell you that I was having an affair and that we should try to fix our marriage. I didn't want to break up the family, but it didn't work out that way. Things got twisted. In the end, I just got over it. You'll pardon me if I find that hard to believe, Claire. You say you weren't going to leave me, but as I recall, I asked you if you wanted to stay with me." She snorted again. "I know I did. And to tell you the truth, I would have fought the marriage for the kids if you'd wanted to. But I was fine with it ending." I thought about that for a moment. I tried to recall our conversations to see if it was true. Maybe it was, but who knows? "You didn't say that. I don't know if it would have changed our relationship, you know. The fact that you slept with my best friend, but it might have. Now we'll never know." She nodded sadly and wiped her nose again. "Yeah, I know. But I wanted to tell you how sorry I am about everything. You didn't deserve this. Whatever you did, you deserved better. I regret my choices. I acted like a teenager with our marriage. If I could do anything over again, I would have come to you before I made the choice to cheat on you with Doug. I would have tried to get you to understand how I felt. Offer counseling or something. I'm not sure it could have saved us, but I had to try for the sake of our marriage and our children. I just wanted to tell you that. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. And it really does. For the first time, I felt like she really understood what she did to me. Of course, she can never know what it feels like unless it happens to her. Having your heart ripped out by two loyal friends is an unparalleled feeling. But at least she realized the depth of her betrayal. In the end, that's all I can ask for. She can't make up for what she put me through. But most of the time, all we want is for someone to hear us, to really look outside of ourselves and see what we see. If I may ask, what brought about this change of heart? She shrugged. I don't know. When I first read our divorce papers, I couldn't escape the thought that it was my fault. When we had to tell the girls about it, I had the same feeling. I came to you that night to talk to you and you threw it in my face. I get it. I was mad at myself, so I knew you must be mad at me. I just thought it was time for me to admit my guilt and not make excuses anymore. I can't get over it and forgive myself if I don't. Do you understand? I nodded in agreement. Yes, I was in that state once too, when I realized how much I'd neglected you and the girls. She smiled at me through her tears. Yes, you tried really hard. I realize that, and I'm so happy for you. Our girls love the extra attention. You're a great dad. Even when you were away all the time, you remained a loving father. Yeah, and even though you were a cheating bitch, you were a good mom to our girls. We may have been shitty spouses, but We should pat ourselves on the back for those two. They're living proof that we're not complete morons. At that, she laughed. Then she stood up and took my hand, pulling me with her from my chair. We ended up hugging. I think that's when I started to forgive her. Really forgive her. I realized I was healing. I felt nothing when she told me she had fallen in love with Doug. No anger, no resentment, just a sense of nostalgic regret for what was once a happy marriage. The woman I had once been in love with. She was now the mother of my children. For that, I will always cherish her. She will always be in my life. Next chapter. "Good morning, Sarah," I said as I walked past her. "Good morning, Mr. Underwood," she said cheerfully. Her smile spread from ear to ear. Sarah was naturally a cheerful person, but this morning she seemed to be something out of the ordinary. I had to stop and ask, "Sarah, you seem to be glowing especially bright today. What makes you so happy?" She glowed, lifting her eyes from her computer. "Oh, nothing. Just went on a date last night." Now I was curious. "A date? With who?" "Hopefully none of the locals. You're too good to be dating one of those nerds." She giggled like a cocky schoolgirl. "No, I went on a date with Jason." "Jason? You're talking about the security guy?" I asked, surprised. She smiled widely and nodded vigorously. I could see every single one of her teeth. "I take it everything went well." What I didn't know was that this statement was the revelation she was looking for. She told me pretty much everything. He was in the Navy, was divorced, had a daughter, and was apparently skilled in the bedroom. She didn't tell me that last part. She didn't need to. Judging by the smile on her face when she said he was making breakfast for her, a man with my genius didn't need simple math. "Well, I'm happy for you. You really deserve it," I said seriously. Sarah was a wonderful woman. Over the years, I had become dependent on her. I was so often immersed in the engineering side of things that, if it was up to me alone, everything else would fall apart. Besides, she always had a light mood that radiated throughout the office. "Thank you, boss. And if I may, I'd like to say that I'm really sorry about the way things turned out. I respect the way you handled the situation. Most people would have become tyrants to everyone around them. But you didn't. You knew about my situation? With Doug?" She nodded. "Of course I knew. I didn't talk to you about it because you didn't seem to want to discuss it. I tried to keep people at a distance who might inundate you with questions about it. However, I had to talk to your intern. He kept foolishly bringing up your wife. For a genius, this Thomas can be a real goofball. You know, someday we'll talk about how it is that you always know what's going on." She winked and smiled wickedly. "I'll never tell." I went down to the lab to check on the latest engine developments. We'd made progress on the problems, but not enough to have anything to report. I was pleased with the dedication of my team, but disappointed that we hadn't made any progress. However, I was anxious to see if the heads would be able to get the patent on this design revoked. If they succeeded and we could get Donald and him on the team, things would get really interesting. The rest of the day was spent tuning, and testing. Before I knew it, it was 8 so. I needed to get home in time to see my girls before they went to bed. As I walked across the parking lot to my car, I felt someone behind me. I turned around just in time to be grabbed and slammed to the ground. "You backstabbing asshole, you destroyed my life." I heard as I was punched over and over again. Surprisingly, the blows didn't hurt. I think they were supposed to hit my face, but they just hit my ear and bounced off, and I was able to defend myself and push him off me. I jumped to my feet and saw Doug breathing heavily, his fists still clenched. Rage and fire filled his eyes and his nostrils flared like a bull's. "You bastard. Donald is suing me for stealing his work, and your damn company is using him to revoke his patent. They're giving him a job at your company. In exchange, he's going to give them the design. My design. It's all your fault." With those words, he pounced on me again. I know it's at this point that I should tell you that I effortlessly used my secret kung fu skills to render him unconscious. Jason Statham's swift movement, executed with smooth precision and bone-crunching precision. Then I stand over him with my foot on his chest and say some sarcastic phrase in a British accent. But no, I'm not a fighter. Neither is Doug. We're a couple of middle-aged engineers who've never been in a real fight. Still, there's a lot to be said for a man with built-up rage. A man who has been suppressing the baser instincts of revving for months, swallowing the urge to let the beast loose. A man who had been forced to ignore the need to vent all the anger, resentment, pain, and humiliation that had come upon him because of someone who was close enough to his heart to nearly kill him with grief. And then the object of his anger shows up, with nothing between them but an open parking lot and a heap of hostility. It's like a wrapped treasure from Santa, nicely and beautifully laid out under the Christmas tree. Almost sounds like there is a God after all. So while the man may not be a fighter, the concept is simple enough for him. The fist comes this way. All he needs is the right motivation to do it. And I had it. Plenty of it. So I beat him, over and over again. And it was wonderful. But every action is followed by an opposite reaction. Yin and yang. There's a reason smart people don't fight. There's a downside to it. Hitting a person is cool. Anyone who tells you it isn't wasn't angry enough to need that kind of release. Getting punched, on the other hand, is not so cool. In movies like Carrier, the bad guy gets hit once, falls off the screen, and is never seen again until the camera shows him and his buddies unconscious. In real life, when you hit a guy, he hits you back. And it hurts. When I was lying on the ground, my face was somewhat protected from the blows. I think it gave me false confidence. When I was standing, the blows didn't bounce back so painlessly. And we fought. Mano a mano. A couple of middle-aged nerds who got together in a parking lot over a woman and a long-standing friendship thrown down the toilet. Each of us threw punches filled with resentment and regret, trying to make the other feel what we felt, translating those emotions into physical pain. The fight lasted probably about 5 minutes, no more. We were both so out of breath you'd think we were Hector and Achilles, a reference to Troy. The next thing I knew, security was pulling us apart. Doug was furious. The guard who was restraining him had to practically pin him to the ground to get him to stop. The guard who was restraining me saw that I was the calmest and warned me to stay put. He then went to help his partner with the hostile man. Did that make me feel better? Yeah, a little. Sometimes civility doesn't work. Look in the history books or just look up any war. Kenny Rogers was right. Sometimes you have to fight if you're a man. Every once in a while, a man just needs to clench his hands into a fist. My face hurt and my right arm might be a little swollen, but I felt like I needed to put myself out there. I know this sounds like machista nonsense. It probably is. But in that moment, I felt like a winner. Adding to my elation was watching the guards taunt Doug while he shouted obscenities at me. It was oddly funny. It was funny enough to keep me from doing something stupid, like running over there and trying to continue this fight. For me, the fight with Doug was over. Seeing my amused face only made him more angry, which made him act even more irrational. This in turn caused them to use more force on him, which only added to the humor and my amusement. A vicious cycle. In the end, he only calmed down when they told him he would be arrested if he didn't leave immediately. So he was forced to leave with his tail between his legs. They further warned him that if they saw him on the grounds again, they would arrest him for trespassing. Damn it. How's that for karma? There was a moment when the shoe was on the other foot. I was about to be arrested for going to his home and office to confront him for stabbing me in the back. He had home court advantage then. Now, funny how life works. Next chapter. A month later, I won a fight of an entirely different kind. I won the bidding. I ended up paying almost $10,000 over the asking price, but it was worth it. I was the proud new owner of a 3-bedroom, 1.5-bathroom townhouse. It wasn't as big as the house I once shared with Claire and my girls, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in a while. The front yard wasn't very big, but the backyard I shared with a neighbor was pretty decent. Plus, there was a great park right down the street. There was even a new bike path that had just been built. It went all the way to the beach. After I bought the house, I was handed the keys. The house belonged to me. Moving day was actually bittersweet. I was excited to finally end this chapter of my life and start a new one, but at the same time nervous about what lay ahead. Luckily, I had a friend to help me get through it. Terry helped me load the things that Claire and I had packed. I wouldn't say we'd be buddies for life, but he's the only person who understood what I was getting at. Sure, he played a more active role in the destruction of the marriage, but that doesn't lessen the feeling of rejection in any way. On the contrary, it intensifies it because you know it's your fault. Plus, he reminded me daily that I'm not as bad a husband as he is. Hey, I'm still a human being. We can have our own selfish motives. So that's it then, said Claire as I carried the last box into the truck. Her eyes were misting slightly, but there were no tears yet. Yep, I'm finally rid of you. A tear finally rolled down her cheek. Yay, she joked weakly, quickly wiping it away. At that moment, I caught a glimpse of Claire, who I had married all those years ago. I missed her. But life changes people. That Claire was gone. Neither was the man who married her. Too much had happened to bridge that gap. Now the two people standing here were older, wiser, and better than themselves than the two who had first married. But their journey together was over. You know, Claire, I just realized that I've never apologized to you once. After everything that happened, I was so involved with you and Doug that I didn't even think about the fact that you needed an apology. Well, that's an understandable omission considering. She lowered her eyes and shifted from foot to foot as her thoughts tormented her. I took her chin lightly and lifted it until she looked me in the eye. Claire, I'm sorry I've neglected you all these years. You deserved a better husband. And that's when the tears really started streaming down her face. I put my arms around her. She hugged me back, crying on my shoulder. Well, at least you won't have to worry about the toilet seat being left up. I joked to lighten the mood. She laughed weakly and we let go of each other. She walked with me to the driver's side of the truck. We stood there for a while. She seemed about to say something but stopped herself several times. Then she finally said, Frank, you can't cook worth a damn. I don't want you to starve to death out there. Since you live right down the street, I wouldn't mind if you came over to my place to eat once in a while, she said, watching me anxiously. I didn't answer right away, so she quickly added, that would be good for the girls. I don't think that's a good idea. The last thing we need is for me to find Doug there when I show up for dinner. No one would like that, especially Doug. Oh, you don't have to worry about Doug. He and I aren't seeing each other anymore. That was a bit of news. I can't say I was upset to hear it. What's wrong, if I may ask? No, everything's fine. Doug and I were doomed from the beginning. I mean, I love him, and I believe he loves me. But we didn't do ourselves any good by starting things the way we did. Then when he started having problems with the patent, he started having so much anger and hatred towards you. Not to mention the fact that both of you assholes acted like Mayweather and Pacquiao, like a couple of juvenile delinquents. I was Mayweather, I joked. Her face contorted into a playful grin. What, obnoxious and full of yourself? Ha 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 ha, that's hilarious. Have you gotten funnier since we got divorced? Whatever. Anyway, it's really stressful. I just can't stand that kind of negativity around girls. You know? You're their father and they love you. I don't think he can take that and be favorable to our lives. She started to cry, and I put my arms around her again. Her arms wrapped around my back and she squeezed me. When we finally let go of each other, she wiped away her tears again. I know this is going to sound selfish, but you did the right thing. Doug isn't the right guy for you. I know you feel like he was there for you, but trust me. You're right when you say your relationship was doomed from the start. Everything was built on him helping you get over me. All he had to do was become the exact opposite of me. Honestly, I don't think you two really knew each other. I thought back to the choice I had given Doug and what he had ended up choosing. I could have told her about it, but she didn't need to right now. I hate to admit it, but Doug and I are more alike than you realize. There's a reason we were best friends. She smiled sadly and nodded her head. Thank you, Frank. I know you want what's best for you, but this isn't helping. I nodded silently and didn't say anything else. I only ran my hand over her cheek before opening the door and getting into the car. I turned on the ignition and the engine rumbled to life. Don't forget about dinner. It's an open invitation, she said. Before I closed the door, I smiled and nodded. She took a step back as I slammed the heavy metal door shut and then put the truck into drive. I watched as Claire waved goodbye and I drove to my new home. After we move you, you owe me a beer, said Terry from the passenger side. Sure thing, Terry. Why don't we have a beer at a place that's full of TNA? Want to go to Sal's? The thought of Sal's made me think of Sandra. It had been months since I'd last seen her. That night at IHOP was still in my mind. I thought about her from time to time. No, I'm not in the mood for that. I know a good sports bar, though. Drive. The truth was that I couldn't go to Sal's and see Sandra in a starlet costume. I really couldn't watch Terry or anyone else drool over her. I knew that person was a fake. I felt a connection with her the first night I met her, but it was built on starlet's facade. The real connection came when I sat with her in a restaurant and watched her devour her plate. Or when I went back to my room and cried myself to tears. That's who intrigued me. The real Sandra was a complex being hiding behind a mask of stone coldness. But she wasn't stone cold. A stone cold person wouldn't hug a complete stranger while they sobbed over their ex-wife. Or listen to that stranger tell her about everything he'd been through. No, a man who does that has a kind, caring heart. A heart that has probably been broken too many times and had to hide in a shell to protect itself. But it still cares. It can't help it, despite itself. Next chapter. James, if you're the one by my car, you better just get out of here. If I have to call Bruno down here, it's going to end very badly. Trust me, it never ends well. Starlet's voice shouted into the darkness of the parking lot. I put my hands up in a sign of surrender. Sandra, I'm sorry I scared you. It's me. I said quickly, hoping she would recognize my voice. Frank? Yes. I saw her visibly relax as she walked over to me. What the hell are you doing lugging around my car? It was dark outside, as it was about 2 in the morning, but the street lights and the large, ostentatious, glowing neon SAL sign provided enough visibility that I could make out her face. I didn't know any other way to see you. Who the hell is James? I swear I saw the hint of a smile, but then I frowned again. No one important. Why didn't you just walk into the club? I nervously shoved my hands in my pockets. I don't know. I guess I didn't want to see Starlet. I wanted to see... you. Frank? No, Sandra. Just hear me out, okay? She stopped whatever she was going to say and nodded. Listen, I feel something for you. I don't know what exactly, but there's something. You were there for me when I needed you. Frank, don't interrupt, because I know what you're going to say. You can't be a girl. You're not cut out for it. Or whatever other excuse you tell yourself to keep other people out. But it's a lie, Sandra. And you know it. She didn't say anything. I waited for her to respond, but I waited for nothing. Then she just walked past me and started to get into her car. So, you're just gonna leave? She turned and looked at me, her face filled with venom. Yes, I'm going to leave because I know how this story ends. Tell me, what do you see for us? Sweet courtship, roses and intimate dinners? We become boyfriend and girlfriend. And then what happens? You wake up in the morning and go to work. When you get home from work, I go to my job. Here. To give lap dances. To have men throw dollar bills at me. And then I'll come home and climb into bed with you and laugh and talk about our hard days at work. Is that what you see for us? I was silent for a moment, letting her comprehend it all. She continued. Are you going to introduce me to your parents, to your children? What are you going to tell them about me? How we first met? I've been down this road before, Frank. It didn't end well. Not for me. So, yes, I'll leave. And I suggest you do the same. She got into the car and started it. No sooner had she pulled out of the parking lot than I got in her way. Get the hell out of my way, damn it! She yelled out the window. I stood my ground until she angrily got out of the car and approached me. Sandra, listen to me. I don't know the answers to these questions, okay? But I feel something for you. You feel it too. If you didn't, you wouldn't be angry right now. All I want is to get to know you better. That's all. We don't have to date. We can just be friends. But I want to see you somehow. She stopped for a moment and stared at me. Then she crossed her arms and looked away. I didn't say anything else. I just let her think. She was still standing there instead of calling Bruno over and kicking my ass, so I knew I didn't need to say anything more. God, you're annoying, she finally spat out. So that's a yes then? I asked uncertainly. She didn't answer. She just uncrossed her arms, reached into her pocket, and pulled out her cell phone. She then entered her code and held it out to me. Enter your cell phone number before I change my mind. Really? Yes, hurry up. It's already changing. I smiled, took the phone from her, and did as she asked. Her demeanor softened a little. It was noticeable. She still wasn't smiling, but the anger she felt a moment ago was gone. She stood with her hand on her hip, but there was no irritation in her face. Do you promise to call me? I asked, as she snatched the phone out of my hands. She just turned around and walked back to her car. Stop being a little girl. I'm going to call you. Now get out of my way before I run you over. She said over her shoulder before getting into her car. I got out of the way and let her drive backwards. She drove past me, backing up. She then stopped reversing and put the car into drive. However, she did not immediately accelerate. I saw her look at me. It wasn't a smile, but the look lingered a moment longer than usual. It wasn't Starlet looking at me, not the cold bitch or the sarcastic woman. It was Sandra. One of those rare glimpses of the girl inside. But she caught it, looked out the windshield, and drove off into the night. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.